Chapter 38-32. Chapter 38-32. The Eldest Prince 4. Chapter 38-32. The Eldest Prince 4. By then, Little Phoenix had finally taken care of the last spiritual overlord. It was stumbling toward Feng Wu until it landed on her palm. Seeing the blood on Little Phoenix's feathers, Feng Wu asked sympathetically, "Are you hurt?" "Where?" Little Phoenix waved her off. "Don't worry about it. It's been years since I fought to my heart's content. That was so satisfying." Seeing that Little Phoenix was in a good mood, Feng Wu was relieved to see that it was all right. The situation was almost under control. There were 7 spiritual overlords in total, and 5 of them were killed by Feng Wu and Huyan Yichen. 1 was killed by Old Huyan, and the other was killed by Little Phoenix. The remaining 2 were at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage, and they had already fought their way into another dimension. Otherwise, the damage would be too severe. His Majesty would hold them responsible. Just then, a group of people slowly walked in. It was a tall, handsome, and well-defined young man, followed by several spiritual overlord guards. Spiritual overlord guards. Feng Wu immediately recognized the person. He looked right into Feng Wu's eyes and smiled. "The King of Refinery?" He stared at Feng Wu with a smile on his face. The letter Feng Wu gave him was signed by the King of Refinery. If it hadn't been for that title, he wouldn't have come all the way here. "Your Royal Highness?" Feng Wu stood a meter away from him, and smiled as well. Right now, Feng Wu was neither servile nor overbearing, and she was very calm. She wasn't as flustered as the others when they saw the prince. The crown prince looked at the ugly girl, followed her gaze, and saw the dead bodies on the ground. They were all his sister's right-hand men. The look on the prince's face was even more cheerful. He walked up to Feng Wu and smiled. "Young lady, did you write that letter?" Feng Wu nodded indifferently. The prince asked, "Did you kill them as well?" Feng Wu raised an eyebrow. "Do you think I'm good enough to do that?" The prince could sense that Feng Wu didn't have any spiritual essence. He waved his hand and gestured at Feng Wu to sit opposite him. No one knew what Feng Wu and the prince talked about. All they saw was that Feng Wu and the prince were enjoying their conversation. Iron Tower was surprised. To him, the prince was cold and unapproachable, and even his young master didn't dare to act recklessly in front of him. However, this girl, she was sitting on the same level as the prince and wouldn't give in. That was impressive. What Feng Wu didn't know was that old Huyan, who had left a long time ago, was also observing her in secret, and was surprised by what she did. However, he soon convinced himself. A weapon refiner that could forge a semi-divine weapon had to be very capable. The prince was only a junior to him. What was so strange about this girl interacting with him as an equal? Just then there was a rumbling sound. What was that? Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, and saw that Huyan Yichen was absorbing the spiritual essence. By then, he had absorbed all the spiritual essence and slowly opened his eyes. The moment he saw Huyan Yichen, the prince frowned, and he jumped to his feet. Chapter 38-33. Chapter 38-33. I'm a Spiritual Overlord 1. Chapter 38-33. I'm a Spiritual Overlord 1. He walked toward Huyan Yichen, moving so fast that the others didn't have time to react. Before they knew it, he was crouching down in front of Huyan Yichen. "Yichen." He waved his hand in front of Huyan Yichen's face. Before Huyan Yichen could react, he waved his hand again. This time, Huyan Yichen finally came back to himself. He stared at the prince, but didn't know what to say. The prince spoke first. "Yichen, did you make a breakthrough?" After all, the prince was a prince of a major kingdom, and had seen much of the world. Hence, he soon calmed down. Judging by his trembling voice, he wasn't all that calm. Huyan Yichen nodded. Yes. Seeing that Huyan Yichen was in a trance-like state, the prince couldn't help but ask, "What level are you now?" Huyan Yichen blushed when he heard that. He jumped to his feet and looked very excited. I. Huyan Yichen didn't dare to speak. He looked around the room. Old Huyan was standing a short distance away. Seeing the look in Huyan Yichen's eyes, the old man stroked his beard. The boy had come to beg him, hadn't he? But After looking around, Hu Yannichen fixed his gaze on Feng Wu. Ugly girl. Hu Yannichen ran toward Feng Wu and almost threw himself at her. Luckily, Feng Wu reacted in time and dodged the attack. However, Hu Yannichen was still very excited. He turned around and stared at Feng Wu. Did you see that? I made a breakthrough. I'm a spiritual overlord now. I'm a spiritual overlord now. Ha 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 ha. That was true. With Hu Yannichen's cultivation level, which was a level 8 spiritual king, he would consider himself lucky if he rose to the spiritual overlord stage in a few years. If he wasn't lucky enough, he might stay that way for the rest of his life. However, he had just made a breakthrough. How could he not be excited? Feng Wu nodded grumpily. However, Hu Yannichen was still very excited. He ran toward the prince and spun the ladder around in circles. Ha ha ha. I'm a spiritual overlord now. I'm a spiritual overlord now. The prince smiled bitterly and rubbed his nose. However, Hu Yannichen wouldn't stop talking. It's all Little Feng's doing. She enabled me to make a breakthrough. She's amazing. Before the prince could react, Hu Yannichen was already running toward the old man. His voice reached his grandfather before he could reach the ladder. Grandpa, 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 I'm a spiritual overlord now. Your grandson is a spiritual overlord. Hu Yannichen ran around the old man in circles in excitement. Old Huyen wanted to slap him to wake him up, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Because he knew that the little girl died in Hu Yannichen's arms. Back then, she said that when her brother reached the spiritual overlord stage, he would be very capable, and he would be able to save her. Old Huyen couldn't bring himself to think about it. As expected, Hu Yannichen, who had been so pleased with himself a moment ago. Chapter 38-34. Chapter 38-34. 1-1M A Spiritual Overlord 2. Chapter 38-34. 1-1M A Spiritual Overlord 2. He bent over, rested his hands on his thighs and burst into tears. I'm already a spiritual overlord. But where am I going to save my sister? Where? Seeing this, Feng Wu walked up to Hu Yannichen and patted him on the shoulder. However, Hu Yannichen looked like a drowning man clutching at his last straw. He wrapped his arms around Feng Wu, buried his head in her chest, and burst into tears again. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. The teenager was the type that would laugh and cry whenever he felt like it. He didn't try to hide his true nature at all. He was so adorable. However, if Jun Linyuan saw him like this, he would be killed. Feng Wu tried to pry his hands off her. However, Hu Yannichen was like an octopus. He wrapped his arms around her and couldn't stop crying. Feng Wu looked up at the sky and met the prince's eyes. Jun Linyuan found Feng Wu's behavior amusing. The way she sighed just then was so amusing. That was to say, Hu Yannichen still didn't know who the girl was. Was he the only one in northern Yen who knew who she really was? The prince was elated. Feng Wu turned to the prince for help with a pleading look on her face. He walked up to Hu Yannichen, grabbed him, and dragged him away from Feng Wu. Feng Wu nodded gratefully at the prince with a long face, but the latter only smiled. Deep down, he found the girl very amusing. He didn't know that legendary teenage girls could be so adorable. Are you done crying? The prince picked up Hu Yannichen and asked in resignation. Hu Yannichen was still sobbing and didn't say a word. The prince heaved a long sigh and said affectionately, "Haven't I told you already? I'll take revenge for you." However, Hu Yannichen stretched out his arm and showed off his biceps excitedly. "I'll take my revenge myself. I'm a spiritual overlord now." The prince was speechless when he saw all the spiritual overlords lying on the ground. He used to think that spiritual overlords were very capable, but when he saw the dead bodies on the ground, he couldn't believe his eyes. Meanwhile, Hu Yannichen ignored the prince and ran toward Feng Wu. Sister Feng, you're going to help me, aren't you?" He gave Feng Wu a pleading look. Feng Wu had a bad feeling. She frowned and asked, "Help you with what?" Hu Yannichen said in a serious tone, "Avenge my sister." Feng Wu pointed at the prince. "Didn't he say he was going to help you? Go find him. What good can a good-for-nothing with no spiritual essence do?" The prince nodded. That was right. He was the heir to the throne. But instead of asking for his help, Hu Yannichen was talking to a good-for-nothing. Although she was a genius, she was still a good-for-nothing. However, Hu Yannichen grabbed Feng Wu's hand and said earnestly, "I'm begging you. You're the only one who can kill that girl." That was to say, Feng Wu looked at the prince involuntarily and saw that his face had darkened. Hu Yannichen was openly despising the prince, and he was going to drag her down with him. Chapter 38-35, Chapter 38-35, The Patriarch 1. Chapter 38-35, The Patriarch 1. Since this was Northern Yan's territory, she had to show the prince some respect. Feng Wu shot a warning glance at Hu Yannichen, but the clueless teenager only replied in a sincere tone. "It's true. You're the only one who can handle that girl. His Royal Highness can't. If he could, he would have taken revenge for me all these years. Why wait until now?" That did make sense. Feng Wu looked at the prince involuntarily. As expected, the crown prince's face was darker than a stormy sky. Feng Wu asked, "How can I do that?" However, Hu Yannichen said matter-of-factly, "Isn't there a saying in the Zhenhua Empire that evil people will be punished by evil people? Princess Rao is exceptionally evil, but you're worse than her. You're the only one who can do that. I have faith in you." Feng Wu was dumbfounded. The prince pointed at Hu Yannichen and laughed until he was in tears. Hu Yannichen looked at the prince in bewilderment. Had he said something wrong? The spiritual overlords brought by the crown prince all had strange looks in their eyes. The eldest prince was a taciturn man who seldom spoke. He only spoke a little when he saw Hu Yannichen, but he had never laughed like this before. At that thought, they couldn't help but dart another look at Feng Wu, trying to figure out who the girl was that could make the crown prince so agitated. The crown prince looked curiously at Feng Wu and said teasingly, "I didn't know you were such a villain. Sorry about that." Feng Wu waved her hands. "It takes one to know one." Hu Yannichen looked eagerly at Feng Wu, who said grumpily, "Go away. Consolidate your cultivation level now, or you'll be in a lot of trouble." Yes. Hu Yannichen followed Feng Wu's order and went to cultivate to consolidate his foundation. The eldest prince and old Huyan looked at each other and shook their heads with wry smiles. Hu Yannichen had never been so obedient. Old Huyan left on his own. The prince sat down opposite Feng Wu and smiled at her. "What are you going to do now?" Feng Wu stared at him and threw the question back at him. "What are you going to do now?" The crown prince said, "You've killed Princess Rao's capable subordinate. What do you think she'll do when the sun rises?" Was he threatening her? Feng Wu smiled. "I'm just a good-for-nothing with no spiritual essence. How can I possibly kill these people? No matter how highly Princess Rao thinks of me, she won't think that way." The prince frowned. As expected, Feng Wu patted his left arm with a smile. "Your Royal Highness, since you're here, shouldn't you be protecting our shop? Didn't you kill those people?" The prince was speechless. Feng Wu grinned. "Don't you agree?" The prince rubbed his forehead. "So, you were going to make me the scapegoat when you sent that letter?" Feng Wu nodded. "I'm too weak to take the blame. She's your competitor, and you can't wait to see her dead. What's wrong with taking the blame?" The prince looked at Feng Wu in resignation and said, "Miss Feng Wu, you're indeed a legendary girl. You've planned everything from the very beginning." Chapter 38-36, Chapter 38-36, The Patriarch 2. Chapter 38-36, The Patriarch 2. Feng Wu smiled. "What do you mean by that?" "I'm helping you get rid of the enemies. Princess Rao has suffered a lot in this battle. Please don't tell me that you're not happy about it." The prince didn't know what to say. Of course he was happy. If he won, he would win the entire kingdom, but this was the first time that someone had pointed it out. He stared at Feng Wu and said indifferently, "Miss Feng Wu, are you always so frank?" Feng Wu shrugged. "Not really. Your Royal Highness, you're the only one who knows who I really am." The prince had been leaning back in his chair, but now he leaned forward, crossed his fingers and stared at Feng Wu. "Aren't you worried that I'll hand you over to Princess Rao?" Feng Wu smiled. "You won't." The prince narrowed his eyes on Feng Wu. Why not? Feng Wu leaned back on the bamboo chair and looked around the room. She then turned to the prince and said, I could kill these spiritual overlords without spiritual essence. What do you think of my capability when I recover my spiritual essence? The look on the prince's face changed. Feng Wu went on. Plus, who am I in the Zhenhua Empire? Who's my patron? Who's he in the Zhenhua Empire? Your royal highnesses are well informed. I don't think I need to explain everything. The prince nodded. He had been keeping an eye on Feng Wu's relationship with Jun Linyuan. For Jun Linyuan's marriage was too important. Feng Wu smiled again. Befriending me is as good as winning the Zhenhua Empire's friendship. The prince said indifferently. The friendship of the Zhenhua Empire is great, but not having it won't matter much. Feng Wu shook her head with a smile. It's true that the friendship of the Zhenhua Empire won't affect your accession to the throne. But what if your competitors suddenly gain the support of other countries? The prince narrowed his eyes. Are you saying? Feng Wu pointed to the northeast. The crown prince asked, the Dongseng kingdom? Feng Wu nodded. The prince stared at Feng Wu with eyes as deep as the ocean. He didn't ask Feng Wu how she knew because he knew that Feng Wu was telling the truth. Interesting. The prince stared at Feng Wu and suddenly smiled. What do you want? Feng Wu stared at him and asked earnestly, You want to hear the truth? The prince said, Yes. Feng Wu nodded and said directly, I need to see your patriarch. The prince almost choked on his tea. He immediately put down his cup and studied Feng Wu with an astonished look on his face. Feng Wu shrugged, not feeling guilty at all. You told me to tell the truth. The prince took a deep breath. Do you know who our patriarch is? Feng Wu asked. Huyan. Yanba? The prince almost spat out another mouthful of water. Huyan Yanba. No one in their generation dared to mention the name of their patriarch, and they all addressed him as patriarch respectfully. However, to this girl, addressing him as Huyan Yanba was as common as addressing someone of her generation. The prince was almost frightened to death. Just shut up. The prince stared at Feng Wu with a solemn look on his face. You shouldn't address our patriarch by his name. If my father finds out, he'll cut your head off. Chapter 38-37. Chapter 38-37. The Patriarch 3. Chapter 38-37. The Patriarch 3. Feng Wu asked curiously, Does the Emperor of Northern Yen respect Huyan? Ahem, your patriarch very much? The prince was speechless. What are you talking about? Does the Zhenhua Empire have no respect for your patriarch? Feng Wu didn't answer. Instead, she changed the subject. I need to see him. The prince noticed that Feng Wu didn't say, I want to see him, but I need to. After a pause, he asked Feng Wu, Are you serious? Feng Wu nodded. I need to see him. Rubbing his smooth chin, the prince was lost in his thoughts. To be honest, it's very difficult to see the patriarch. He's so elusive that he may not be in Northern Yen now. Feng Wu said, But he'll be here in 2 weeks. The prince looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Why are you so sure? Feng Wu repeated, He has to be here. Seeing how serious Feng Wu was, the prince realized that she must know something. Fine, let's just say that he's in Northern Yen, but it's still very difficult to meet him. The prince smiled bitterly. Actually, it'll be easier if you go to Raoshi, because the patriarch has been kind to her. Feng Wu asked, Really? The crown prince nodded. It's true. He once said that Raoshi looked a lot like an old friend of his. Maybe that's why. Who knows? But Raoshi can indeed enter this spiritual concealing tower. If it wasn't for the fact that the patriarch likes Raoshi, a woman like her would never have been able to compete with me for the throne. My father still values the patriarch's opinion more than anything else. Seeing that Feng Wu was honest, the prince was very straightforward. Feng Wu nodded and said affirmatively, I'm sure you can figure it out. The prince smiled bitterly and didn't reply. He suddenly asked, Can you tell me why you want to see the patriarch? Although I'm a prince, the patriarch's safety is at stake, and my father won't leave it alone. I'm taking too big a risk. After some thought, Feng Wu decided to tell the crown prince, Have you heard of the primary heaven pill? The crown prince nodded. The pill is a body-strengthening elixir the patriarch prepared for Raoshi. She hasn't been well since she was little, so It's mine. Feng Wu spoke before the prince could finish. The prince was baffled and stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu nodded and repeated, "The pill is mine." The prince was shocked. What happened today had exceeded his expectations several times. The girl in front of him was a legend. "Did you just say?" The prince swallowed. "The pill is yours." Had it been anyone else, he would have kicked them out already. However, this was Feng Wu, and Feng Wu had made her name in the Zhenwu Empire. Not to mention what Feng Wu had just done, the prince couldn't help but believe her. Feng Wu nodded and didn't say another word. The prince leaned back in his chair and heaved a sigh. "If that's true then, can I make a guess?" The prince sat up straight again and leaned forward. "The patriarch doesn't dote on Raoshi as much as she claims. Of course, you know that people like us don't like to spread the news ourselves. All we need to do is to take advantage of the situation and send out a signal." Chapter 38:38. Chapter 38:38. The Patriarch 4? Chapter 38:38. The Patriarch 4. Tilting her head, Feng Wu gave it some thought and said, "I don't know if your patriarch really dotes on Raoshi, but what I'm sure of is that the primary heaven pill is mine. Moreover, your patriarch only has the safe custody of the pill, not the right to use it." The prince looked at Feng Wu in amazement. Feng Wu nodded solemnly. The prince took a deep breath. "You're so unfathomable." He was scared. Feng Wu grinned. "So, are you willing to work with me?" She smiled and extended her hand. Closing his eyes, the prince racked his brain. Every man for himself. He would never help Feng Wu for no reason, for the two of them hadn't been emotionally involved before. Therefore, the only thing he cared about now was his personal gain. The prince opened his eyes, which were as clear as bottomless pools and as sharp as blades. "So, what will you give me if we work together?" Keeping his gaze on Feng Wu, the prince enunciated each word. Feng Wu smiled. "I'm going to give you an opportunity to become the king. Will you take it?" Judging by Feng Wu's tone, he knew that she was going to destroy his rival for him. Raoshi wasn't that easy to handle, especially when she had a patriarch behind her. However, this girl seemed to be very influential. They might as well work together. "Happy working with you." The prince shook Feng Wu's hand. They smiled at each other. Meanwhile, the princess's residence was a mess. Thump, thump, thump. Things kept falling. Outside, Saixia and Muley looked at each other, and both saw fear in each other's eyes. The princess they remembered was elegant, unperturbed, and could make other people lose their minds with a smile. But she was smashing things in exasperation now. That was something they had never seen before. "What should we do now?" Muley panicked and asked in a low voice. Saixia waved at her with a straight face, indicating that she should keep her silence. Muley lowered her voice. "But Sister Feiyu is inside. Is something going to happen to her?" Saixia shook her head. Soon they heard the sound of someone being whipped. Thump, thump, thump. The cracking sounds were so loud that they reminded me of raindrops. With each crack, Muley cringed, and a chill ran down her spine. She covered her ears, but hearing Feiyu's painful voice, Muley thought she was going to have a nervous breakdown. After a long while, she heard the sound of a whip being thrown away. "Come in," a cold voice rang out. Muley shuddered and almost cried out. Saixia threw a dirty look at her and warned her in a low voice. "The princess is venting her anger. Behave yourself if you want to live." Muley nodded nervously. The two of them went inside together. The clean and tidy room was in a mess. There were crumbs everywhere, and there wasn't even enough room to stand on. Among the debris was a person covered in blood. She was lying on her stomach and was covered with cuts and bruises. It was a terrifying scene. Right now, Princess Rao was sitting in front of the dressing table and slowly straightening her makeup. She didn't seem to notice anything. Muley's heart was pounding, and she was shaking. She noticed that the one covered in cuts and bruises was none other than Sister Feiyu, who had delivered the news to the princess. Chapter 38-39. Chapter 38-39, The Patriarch 5. Chapter 38-39, The Patriarch 5. Sister Feiyu was the princess's senior maid, and Mealy remembered the day before. Feiyu had chatted with her, and told her that the princess was very nice to her. She had earned a lot of money this month, and had saved up a little. She was going to send it to her family, but now. Clean this place up. Princess Rao glanced at them, her face as calm as ever. She headed for the door after that. After Princess Rao left, Mealy let out a breath of relief. Her forehead was covered with sweat. Finally, my God. Mealy heaved a long sigh and said to Caixia, let's save Sister Feiyu. After that, Mealy crouched down, and was going to treat her with hemostatic medicine. But Caixia didn't move. Mealy prompted her. Caixia, come here. It's Feiyu. However, Mealy couldn't finish her sentence. Because she could feel Feiyu's breath, and the latter was no longer breathing. She anxiously tried to find Feiyu's pulse, but there was nothing. Ah! Mealy screamed, rose to her feet and stumbled back. She suddenly realized that Sister Feiyu was. She's. Mealy was so frightened that she couldn't speak. But Caixia seemed to be very experienced. She found a bag in the corner and put Feiyu in it. Mealy watched this with her mouth agape. Soon, Caixia stuffed the body in. Looking up, she saw Mealy standing there in a trance-like state. She frowned and said in a solemn voice, come here and help me. Mealy said, the princess has. Before Mealy could finish, Caixia cast a stern look at her. Do you want to become a dead body as well? Mealy said, no, of course not. Caixia said, give me a hand then. Mealy said, yes, of course. Although she said yes, her hands were shaking violently. Caixia sighed inwardly. Caixia snorted, I've been doing this since I was little. Even if I'm not bold enough, I've learned it. Mealy's stomach lurched. Caixia said she had been used to it since she was little, and Mealy suddenly felt like crying. Caixia suddenly asked, Xylan will be here soon. You can show her around. Xylan is coming back. But isn't she dead? Mealy was frightened again, and her face went ghastly pale. As a newbie, she felt that the world had turned upside down. Caixia glanced at her. The girl was so naive that she was willing to say a few more words. Don't you know? Caixia glanced at her. The princess's maids' names never change, but the people using those 4 names will. After that, Caixia carried the dead body out of the room and told Mealy, clean this place up before you come back out. By then, Mealy was dumbfounded. Holy crap. What was that supposed to mean? The people using those 4 names could change? Was it what she thought? Mealy was so frightened that she fell to the ground. Right now, Feng Wu knew that Princess Rao would be furious, for the prince had done a naughty thing. He sent a letter to invite Princess Rao here to the shop, saying that he had something nice to show her. Chapter 38-40, Chapter 38-40, The Patriarch 6. Chapter 38-40, The Patriarch 6. Of course, Princess Rao knew what her brother wanted to show her. She wouldn't come, but she would be furious. Report to the authorities, Huyinichin said coldly. After what they did to our shop, we can't pretend that nothing has happened. Do you think I'm that easy to bully? After what she did to me back then, I won't stand for this. The prince didn't stop him. Hence, Huyinichin went to the punishment office and banged on the drum. The punishment office was the judicial department of the empire, and was in charge of all the officials of the imperial court and the imperial family. Huyinichin had determined that it was Princess Rao's doing, so he came here directly. The punishment office was having a peaceful time. The imperial court had been peaceful recently, and the head of the office had been trying to have a son to inherit the family business. Just then, a servant came to report that the young master of a shop had come to complain. The office head frowned. It's just a small shop. Why are you so nervous? Get out. But that's petty shop. Petty shop? Do you mean that petty shop? Master Huyan's shop. Yes. Why didn't you say so earlier? The office head put on his clothes. Apart from being a master refiner, Master Huyan was also a member of the royal family. He also had a title, which was quite prominent, although the old man himself never paid much attention to it. When the officer saw Hu Yannichen sitting there, he was even more convinced. The teenager had addressed him as uncle, which was quite affectionate. Ahem. The office head cleared his throat. May I ask who you are and what you're here for? Instead of mentioning Princess Rao, Hu Yannichen feigned a teary voice. Uncle, please help us. Someone tried to assassinate my grandfather and me in our shop last night. We almost got killed. Assassination? Northern Yen had always been a safe place. How could someone try to assassinate the top weapon refiner of the kingdom? Are you alright? How's your grandfather? Master Huyen was the most important figure of the kingdom, and they had to keep him safe. Recalling what Feng Wu had told him, Hu Yannichen made up his mind to give Princess Rao a hard time. He feigned a teary voice and said, My grandpa is badly injured, and he's lying at home with the bodies of the assassins who broke in last night. Sir, please bring us justice. He didn't need to say more. Hence, with a wave of his hand, the office head was going to send one of his most capable men to investigate the case. However, after recalling Master Huyen's status, he said in a hurry, I'll go myself and pay him a visit while I'm at it. He was furious when he saw the half-collapsed shop. That's outrageous. Which thief is so heartless? I'll arrest him and punish him. He had made up his mind that he would make sure that the case was properly investigated. For with how important Master Huyen was to His Majesty, the case would soon reach his ears. However, when he saw the bodies on the ground, he was baffled. The dead bodies didn't look like ordinary people. His most capable subordinate was called Yang Zong, who stared at him in bewilderment and didn't know what to do. The office head gave him a warning glance. Yang Zong looked distressed. Chapter 3841. Chapter 3841. Investigate 1. Chapter 3841. Investigate 1. Yang Zong looked distressed. However, the office head urged him, check it now. Yang Zong moved closer and whispered in his superior's ear. Sir, all 7 of them are spiritual overlords. Spiritual overlords. Hearing that, the officer almost fell to the ground. Spiritual overlords were all precious treasures of the kingdom, but now, are you saying that all of them? The officer went ghastly pale. Yang Zong nodded. The officer was astonished. He didn't know what to say. He was in big trouble. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself down, before turning to Hu Yannichen. Where's your grandfather? He had to talk to the old man. However, Hu Yannichen only said to the officer with a long face, My grandpa is badly injured and shouldn't be disturbed. Please let me know if you need anything. Having no other choice, the officer asked Hu Yannichen tentatively, Are all 7 spiritual overlords? Hu Yannichen looked surprised. Spiritual overlords? No wonder. They're so powerful. My family was almost annihilated last night. The officer looked at Hu Yannichen in bewilderment. 7 spiritual overlords. How did you survive and leave their bodies behind? Only a handful of people in the Northern Yin Kingdom could send 7 spiritual overlords at once. Hu Yannichen said, Luckily, His Royal Highness happened to be in the area, and he had some capable men with him. Otherwise, my grandfather and I would have been dead by now. We could have lost our top weapon refiner. Sir, please look into it. The officer felt a headache coming on. This investigation was going to be very problematic. But what Hu Yannichen said next was, If you can't do it, don't worry. I'll go to His Majesty now. I'm going to report to His Majesty. The officer was speechless. To make it worse, Yang Zong, who had finished examining the body, whispered in the officer's ear. There's a body here. It's Princess Rao's secret guard. A chill ran down the officer's spine as he stared at his subordinate. Yang Zong nodded solemnly. The officer drew in his breath. He had been trying to stay out of the competition between the eldest prince and Princess Rao. Who would have thought that the 2 of them had reached this stage? However, the Northern Yin Kingdom was the one that was losing power. At that thought, the officer was furious. He said to Hu Yannichen, This is too big a matter for the punishment office to handle. His Majesty has to do something. All Hu Yannichen wanted was to tell the king about it. Princess Rao had sent someone to assassinate him. He would like to see what the king would say when they caught her red-handed. Hu Yannichen had no idea what Feng Wu and the prince discussed the night before. Nor did he know what their plan was. All he knew was that the girl was so awesome that Princess Rao would never be her match. All he needed to do was follow the girl's order. That was what Hu Yannichen thought, but he put on a sad face. Since we have to report this to His Majesty, I'll leave it to you. The officer liked Hu Yannichen. After all, Hu Yannichen had taken the official route and didn't go above the punishment office when he could have gone to His Majesty directly. Chapter 3842. Chapter 3842. Investigate 2. Chapter 3842. Investigate 2. However, something happened at home as soon as the officer went back and finished writing the memorial to the throne. Someone came to see him. He narrowed his eyes when he saw the person. The visitor was Princess Rao's daily servant. Sir, have we met before? Saisha asked and glanced at him. The office head was a third-ranked official and one of the 3 chiefs of the judicial department. However, to Saisha, he was only an average official because her master was going to be the future king. Seeing Saisha, the office head sighed inwardly. Some things were bound to happen. Sir, since you've recognized me, there's no need to beat around the bush. Let's get straight to the point. Saisha looked at the office head. The office head was so angry that he laughed. Because of what had happened to Hu Yannichen, he had gone to see the eldest prince, who had been so mild and humble toward him. However, Princess Rao's maid was acting so arrogantly in front of him now. How interesting. The office head sat in a chair with a cold look in his eyes. Saisha frowned a little. Was he going to disrespect the princess? At that thought, she slowly walked up to the office head and stared at him. Sir, what are you laughing at? The office head didn't say anything and only stared at her. Saisha cleared her throat. If I'm guessing correctly, you're investigating the incident in Hu Yannichen's family, aren't you? The office head didn't reply. Saisha stared at him. My princess has something to say about this case. Really? The office head smiled at her. I wonder what Princess Rao has to say. Saisha looked into his eyes and said in a warning tone. My princess wants you to drop the case if you can. You're a busy man. Don't tire yourself out. The office head was so angry that he laughed. Princess Rao wants to do whatever she wants. How arrogant. Do you have a different opinion? Saisha frowned and was surprised because when the princess told her to come, she told her to just tell the old man to shut up. If Saisha repeated those words, the office head would be furious. But the fact was that Princess Rao was still furious over the death of 7 spiritual overlords. She had come up with several plans to catch Hu Yannichen and the others all at once. The office head nodded. Your princess can speak for herself if she has something to say. After that, he waved her off with a stern look on his face. This isn't a place for a maid like you. Leave now. Saisha was dumbfounded. The officials had always been very polite to Princess Rao. For not only was His Majesty behind her, but the Patriarch was as well. At the thought of the omnipotent Patriarch, Saisha smirked. So, I advise you to think it through. The office head waved his hand impatiently. Get lost. Saisha gritted her teeth and threatened him. Fine. If that's the case, don't blame us for what our princess will do. Don't come to us for help when the time comes. She turned to leave after that. She had thought that the office head would stop her, but he didn't. Instead, he smirked. Terrific. Saisha left in a huff. A figure entered the study after she left. Chapter 3843. Chapter 3843. Investigate 3. Chapter 3843. Investigate 3. Just then, the wife of the office head entered the room. My lord, that's Princess Rao's personal maid. Are you sure you can do this? His wife gritted her teeth. The office head sighed. The eldest prince and Princess Rao are involved, and the competition for the throne isn't something to be taken lightly. We'll stay out of it and remain neutral. We'll only support His Majesty. His wife said, if Princess Rao takes her revenge. The office head smiled bitterly. She'll have to wait until she becomes the emperor. His wife said, apart from His Majesty, she also has the Patriarch. Isn't she the only one the Patriarch likes? Even His Majesty is on her side. The office head shook his head. If she really is that kind of person, Northern Yin will have a darkest moment when she becomes the king. No, I won't allow. His wife smiled bitterly. She hoped it wouldn't come to that. After Caixia went back, she told Princess Rao about the office head's reaction. Princess Rao narrowed her eyes. Is that really his reaction? Caixia lowered her gaze and said respectfully, I've been very polite, but he wouldn't drop the case no matter what. He even said that the memorial to the throne had been sent to the palace. According to the rules of the Northern Yin Kingdom, the memorial to the throne would be sent to the royal palace on the same day for His Majesty to see. The following morning, His Majesty would take it out for discussion. If the officials heard about it, Princess Rao was both angry and troubled. She was furious because she had lost so many capable cultivators. She only had so many spiritual overlords left. She had to be out of her mind to send so many of them. But she had no idea that the eldest prince's men would suddenly show up. She then recalled the arm of discipline, which had brought her to think about the ugly girl. Ever since she ran into that girl, she knew that she was going to be in trouble. It just didn't feel right. Kill her, Princess Rao said angrily. Her? Who? Caixia was confused, but when she saw the murderous look in Princess Rao's eyes, she realized something. The ugly girl who lives in Petty Shop? Your Highness, we sent so many capable cultivators, but they still couldn't kill her. Now. Plus, could it be the eldest prince's plan? Has he gotten wind of it already? Will he still have people guarding there? Caixia asked more questions. Princess Rao was furious. Fine. Have someone keep an eye on her. Kill her as soon as she's alone. Princess Rao gritted her teeth. And make sure you get that arm. Her 18th birthday was coming up, and according to the Patriarch, if everything went as planned, she would get that pill at her 18th birthday banquet. That way, she would be able to make great achievements in her cultivation and become the ruler of the kingdom. After all the medicine she had taken, all the supplementary cultivation techniques she had practiced, and all the hard work she had put in since she was little, she had to have that pill. Seeing the look on Princess Rao's face, Caixia didn't dare to say anything and only nodded. And send someone to stop the carriage from entering the palace. Stop the memorial to the throne before it reaches the king. Princess Rao wanted to stall. All she needed to do was to keep it a secret until after her birthday party. As long as she could get that primary heaven pill, the eldest prince would be nothing. Who else could compete with her for the throne? At that thought, Princess Rao looked pleased. Chapter 3844. Chapter 3844. Investigate 4. Chapter 3844. Investigate 4. It was true that she hadn't done anything all these years, but she had been fawning on the Patriarch, and that was the right thing to do. Princess Rao was very pleased with herself for fawning over the Patriarch. She smirked inwardly when she saw Caixia leave. It would be great if she could stop the memorial to the throne, but if she couldn't do it in time. Princess Rao's eyes glinted coldly. She had to get started. Come out, she said coldly. A gray figure appeared in front of her. Lowering her voice, Princess Rao gave him instructions on what to do, and the person quickly left after receiving the order. Before long, Caixia came back, looking displeased. Your Royal Highness. With a long face, Caixia told Princess Rao that the people she sent couldn't stop the memorial. Caixia had thought that Princess Rao would vent her anger on her, and that she would end up like Feiyu. However, Princess Rao only waved her off, and left her with some other instructions. Back at the shop, Huyanichin ran up to Feng Wu happily and said excitedly, Feng, I've done everything you asked of me. What's next? What shall we do next? Feng Wu wasn't alone. The eldest prince was with her as well. Right now, the eldest prince was looking at Huyanichin with an aggrieved look in his eyes. He was sitting there, but Huyanichin ignored him, and was only talking to the girl. Feng Wu was forging a weapon at the moment. After the arm of discipline, Feng Wu decided to make something else. Feng Wu had planned to build herself a divine-level armor, if she had more divine iron. Although the soft armor Jun Linyuan gave her earlier was very useful, it could protect her from both front and back. But she was short of divine iron, so she could only make some gadgets that would be useful soon. Seeing that Hu Yannichen was running happily toward her, Feng Wu glanced at him and didn't give him another look, for she couldn't afford to be distracted. Hu Yannichen wanted to say something, but the eldest prince gave him a warning glance. Hu Yannichen said, "Your Royal Highness, there you are." The prince was so angry that he almost laughed. Why was it so hard to see a living person like him? After that, Hu Yannichen just stood there and watched Feng Wu work. He didn't ask any more questions. The crown prince rolled his eyes at him. "Aren't you going to ask what happened after the incident last night?" Hu Yannichen cried out, "You know? That was hilarious." As the eldest prince and one of the heirs to the throne, he had a lot of connections. If he didn't know who did, that girl. Crossing his hands behind his back, the crown prince snorted and waited for Hu Yannichen to ask the question. But Hu Yannichen didn't say anything. The eldest prince took a deep breath and calmed himself down. 15 minutes later, Feng Wu was finally done with her work. Hu Yannichen asked curiously, "What are you making? It looks like a mosquito." Feng Wu nodded. "Does it look like a real mosquito?" Hu Yannichen looked at it and nodded. "It does look like it. What does it do? Can it explode? Is it an offensive secret weapon?" Feng Wu said grumpily, "No, it's a detection device." Before Hu Yannichen could react, the prince's eyes lit up, and he forgot about his little tantrum. Chapter 3845. Chapter 3845. New Invention 1. Chapter 3845. New Invention 1. The prince's eyes lit up. He quickly walked up to Feng Wu and stared at the inky black mosquito in Feng Wu's hand. He looked at Feng Wu in excitement and reached out. Feng Wu knew that the prince was her business partner these days, and she would have to depend on him if she wanted to meet the patriarch. At that thought, Feng Wu put the mosquito in the prince's hand. The prince held the mosquito with both hands and examined it closely. Hu Yannichen rolled his eyes at him. "What's there to see? It's just a toy." The prince looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment as well. "Is this mosquito used for detection? Can it fly?" Feng Wu nodded. No one knew how she did it, but the little thing the size of a black bean slowly rose from the prince's hand like a real mosquito. It flapped its wings and flew in the air. "That's true." The prince stared at the mosquito and heaved a long sigh. He then turned to Feng Wu. "Did you say this is a detector? How is it going to do that?" Feng Wu suddenly smiled and asked Hu Yannichen, "Do you want to know what your grandfather is doing?" Hu Yannichen said, "Isn't my grandpa sleeping in his room?" Feng Wu smiled. She then took out a white jade from her chest pocket and drew an inscription on it. The next moment, the mosquito flapped its wings and slowly flew toward old Huyen's room. It wasn't moving very fast and looked like a real mosquito. Soon the mosquito stopped outside the room because the door was closed. Hu Yannichen laughed. "Look, your mosquito is so stupid. It flew around the door and was dumbfounded. After all the effort you've put in, what good can it do? It's useless." However, Hu Yannichen was soon proven wrong. When the mosquito found a corner where it couldn't see clearly, it stuck its head forward and made a small hole. The rice-sized mosquito then flapped its wings and flew into old Huyen's room. Hu Yannichen's mouth fell open, and he stared at Feng Wu. Is that even possible?" Feng Wu nodded. "Why not? But, it's a fake mosquito. How could it be so smart? It could poke holes with its antennae and choose a blind spot in the corner? That was incredible." Feng Wu smiled. "It's only like this because it's a fake mosquito." Meanwhile, the fake mosquito was hovering over old Huyen's head. Old Huyen wasn't asleep. He was sitting at his desk with a pen in his hand. He was writing something, and there were piles of paper scattered all over the floor. Feng Wu glanced at Hu Yannichen and commented, "Your grandfather's handwriting really isn't that good." "Huh?" Hu Yannichen looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. "My grandpa's handwriting? Wait, How do you know how good my grandpa's handwriting is? You've never seen it before. The next moment, Feng Wu unfolded the white jade. There was a clear image on the white jade. In the image, old man Huyin was sitting at his desk, holding a pen in one hand and scratching his ear with the other. He looked like a hopeless student. Huyin cried out. Chapter 3846. Chapter 3846. New Invention 2. Chapter 3846. New Invention 2. Huyin pointed at the white jade. You can see everything. Feng Wu nodded matter-of-factly. Huyin was still shocked. I can't believe it. Although the image wasn't very clear or very big, Huyin still saw what his grandfather was doing right away. He could even recognize the words he was writing. That's amazing, Huyin cried out. You've been working on it this whole time. My grandpa is the best refiner in northern Yen, but he has never made anything like this. They're inscriptions, aren't they? Huyin studied the white jade plate in Feng Wu's hand. Feng Wu nodded and tossed him the white jade plate. Huyin caught it in a hurry, fearing that it might break. As a refiner, how could he not be excited when he saw something so amazing? The prince was equally excited. As a scheming man, he had come up with a million ways to make use of the detector. It would no doubt help him in his future competition for the throne. Show me. He wanted to take the token from Huyin. But Huyin wanted to see it as well. He couldn't bring himself to let go of it, so he clenched his fists. The prince threw a dirty look at Huyin. Huyin pretended that he didn't see anything. The prince feigned an angry tone and asked in a low voice, Huyin? Huyin was frustrated. He darted a resentful look at the prince and said reluctantly, What kind of prince are you? All you ever do is use your power to bully me. TSK. But no matter how reluctant he was, the prince was still the heir to the throne. Huyin handed the mosquito to him in frustration. After taking it, the prince imitated Feng Wu and started working on the detector. Hey, it's coming out. Seeing that the mosquito had come out of the little cave after the prince had turned it around, Huyin moved closer to take a closer look. The aggrieved look on his face was long gone. What a careless teenager. Feng Wu couldn't help but glance at Huyin, and she was affected by his bright smile. Huyin reminded her of someone she knew. Just then, the door opened with a thump. Old Huyin came out. But they weren't looking at the old man. Instead, they were looking at the mosquito that had been hovering over his head. Old Huyin came out and saw that the eldest prince was also there. He nodded at him. He then frowned at Feng Wu. Kiddo, are you sure this plan will work? Old Huyin had focused all his attention on forging weapons and didn't have much of an advantage in terms of strategy. Not only had Feng Wu killed so many spiritual overlords, but she had also helped Huyin to make a breakthrough. Therefore, old Huyin recognized Feng Wu's intelligence. Feng Wu smiled. Yes. Old Huyin frowned. What's your plan? Feng Wu smiled. You have the right to report to the king, don't you? Write a memorial to the throne first. Old Huyin blushed. All he ever thought about was forging weapons, and he had never written a memorial to the throne before. Feng Wu said, Actually, you don't need to write anything fancy. You can just hand in a piece of paper. It's just a formality. Both old Huyin and the prince looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. What did she mean by that? What would the blank paper do? Chapter 3847. Chapter 3847, New Plan. Chapter 3847, New Plan. Neither of them asked that question, but Huyin asked curiously, What do you mean? This is a memorial to His Majesty. You can't just hand in blank sheets. Feng Wu only smiled mysteriously and didn't say anything. The less Feng Wu said, the more curious Huyin became. He nudged Feng Wu's arm and said anxiously, Just tell me. Having no other choice, Feng Wu sighed and waved at the three of them. Hence, the three of them gathered around and formed a circle. A few steps away, Quan Shi, the prince's personal guard, couldn't believe his eyes. Wasn't the prince supposed to be aloof and unapproachable? But now, he was eavesdropping with his back arched and his buttocks raised, Was he still the prince and the future king? Feng Wu had no idea what was going on in the guard's head. She summarized her plan in a few words. Huiyin was the first to be astonished. You're making such a big deal out of this. Gosh. Huiyin looked at Feng Wu, as if he was looking at a god. His eyes were twinkling with admiration. Old Huiyan's face darkened, and he waved his hand. No. Huiyin was about to speak, but Feng Wu beat him to it. Feng Wu glanced at old Huiyan. I didn't ask for your opinion. Old Huiyan glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said casually, I'm only telling you the plan. Old Huiyan flared up. Who gave you the right to specify this plan? Feng Wu said, myself. Old Huiyan smirked. Yourself? You're just a good-for-nothing with no spiritual essence. What kind of capability do you have? Feng Wu only smiled at him. Old Huiyan suddenly realized that although the girl wasn't capable, she had already proved how lethal she was. She was indeed terrifying. Ahem. What I'm saying is that we can think about it. Old Huiyan's tone softened a little. Huiyin gave the old man a strange look. The old man had always been a stubborn man, but he had just given in. What an eye-opener. Huiyin admired Feng Wu even more now. How could she be so capable? The old man glanced at the prince, indicating that it was time for him to intervene. After all, Feng Wu's plan would scare the wits out of anyone. She was so bold. However, the prince only smiled and said to Feng Wu, I think it'll work. What? Old Huiyan stared at the prince in disbelief. The prince smiled a little and nodded at old Huiyan. We'll give it a go. Old Huiyan was so angry that he almost had an internal injury. Just then, his favorite grandson chimed in, his eyes twinkling. Grandpa, I think so too. Old Huiyan was furious. What are you? Just then Feng Wu chuckled. Are you sure you don't want to clean up the mess? Huh. Old Huiyan stared at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Afraid of getting hit, his grandson had already run up to Feng Wu. He stuck his head out and looked at old Huiyan. That's right, Grandpa. Your room is covered with waste paper. Is it that difficult to write a memorial to the throne? You usually force me to read, but you can't do it yourself. The old man looked astonished. How did they know that? However, his first reaction was to deny it. Glaring at Huiyin with a darkened face, he said, Nonsense. I can write memorials to the throne. Huiyin snapped. Grandpa, stop pretending. You look just like me when you were struggling. The old man blushed and wanted to smack Huiyin, but Huiyin showed him the white jade plate. Grandpa, look. It's all there. We saw everything. Old Huiyin was dumbfounded when he saw the image on the white jade plate. Because the mosquito was hovering over his head, he saw himself. He looked from Feng Wu to Huiyin. What's going on? This is... The old man spun around in excitement. As a top-notch weapon refiner, he knew much better than Huiyin did. He knew exactly how amazing this thing was. Do you want to... Old Huiyin stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu nodded earnestly. Old Huiyin said, That's why you're so sure. But someone still needs to. Feng Wu operated the jade plate, and with a thump, flames shot out. The fire was aimed at the old man's head, so fast that no one had time to react. Old Huiyan's white hair was on fire. By the time old Huiyan put out the fire, he only had half of his hair left. However, not only wasn't he angry, but he even held the mosquito as if it were a treasure. This is a treasure. Where did this come from? The patriarch was here. Huiyin said grumpily. Of course not. Boss Feng made it. Huiyin had been addressing Feng Wu as ugly girl, but he had changed it to Miss Feng the day before and was now Boss Feng. Old Huiyin, on the other hand, was so excited to see the mosquito in his hands that he wanted to take it apart and study it. Huiyin said anxiously, Grandpa, this mosquito is very useful. Please don't destroy it. Old Huiyin asked, Are there more? Huiyin looked at Feng Wu. Feng Wu shook her head. There's one more, but it's not loaded with high explosive bullets. After that, Feng Wu handed the other and used one to old Huiyin. After taking it, old Huiyin didn't care about Feng Wu's plan and more. He shut himself in a small black room and studied the mosquito with all his attention. To him, Nothing could excite him more than studying something new. After sending old Huyen away, Feng Wu let out a breath of relief as well. She then turned to the eldest prince. Shall we begin? The prince smiled and stuck out his right hand like Feng Wu did the day before. Happy working with you. Happy working with you. Feng Wu drew back her hand after a light touch, and the prince marched off after her. He would be the one to carry out the plan. According to Feng Wu, if this could happen, Princess Rao, who had lost some of her strength, would suffer a huge loss. Chapter 3848. Chapter 3848. Ongoing 1. Chapter 3848. Ongoing 1. In the royal palace of Northern Yen, Princess Rao entered the palace. She went to the imperial study first, and was stopped at the door, because His Majesty was going through the memorials, and no one was to disturb him. Princess Rao's face was as calm as still water. She then whispered something in the eunuch's ear. However, the young eunuch shook his head with a pale face. Princess Rao frowned and said coldly, "His Majesty will leave when the time comes." Hearing that, the young eunuch finally nodded, as if he was ready to die. Seeing that he had stiffened and slowed down, Princess Rao warned him, "If you tell anyone, you'll be decapitated." The young eunuch shuddered. He then straightened his back and moved naturally. After that, Princess Rao quickly went to see her mother. The queen was sipping her tea, and the atmosphere in the palace was very peaceful. However, when Princess Rao told her about the current situation, the queen frowned. Is that true? Princess Rao didn't behave like a peacock in front of the queen. Instead, she looked very innocent. The queen was sitting, and Princess Rao knelt down in front of her. She buried her face in the queen's palm and said, "Mother, all 7 spiritual overlords are dead. Huyen Chen still won't let me go. He's going to report to my father. Mother, Huyen Chen isn't capable enough to do that." The queen didn't seem flustered at all. She remained unperturbed. After taking a sip of her tea, she said with a grim look on her face, "The eldest prince is involved now. He's the only one who's capable enough to do that. He's also the one who wants to take you down." "Mother, I don't think my brother is the only one. There's also that mysterious girl." The ordinary-looking girl appeared in Princess Rao's mind. She wasn't all that stunning, but her eyes were like twinkling stars in the night sky. Hence, she told the king about the girl who had shown up in the shop. But the queen didn't think much of it. She's just a girl with no spiritual essence. What's important is to hush this thing up. The queen stared at Princess Rao. "What are you going to do?" Princess Rao said, "What happened happened. Huyen Chen and my brother were the witnesses. It was said that the head of the punishment office went to examine the scene, and they have all 7 dead spiritual overlords. The head has sent a memorial to the throne, and it can blow up at any moment." The queen's face darkened. Princess Rao said, "We have 2 options now. One is to admit to my father what I've done, but I'm sure he won't forgive me that easily. The second option is to burn the memorial." Empress Dugu said, "Even if we do that, the office head can always write another one." Princess Rao said, "I'll go see him myself and ask him to stall for a few days. I'm sure it'll work." Empress Dugu asked, "What about Huyen Chen or your brother? Are they going to wait?" Princess Rao said, "I just need a few more days. How about?" She whispered something in the queen's ear. "How dare you?" The queen smacked the table and glared at Princess Rao. Princess Rao immediately knelt down and put on a pitiful look. The queen threw a dirty look at her. Princess Rao tugged at the queen's sleeve. "Mother, I'll be fine when the patriarch comes out of his seclusion. I'll be fine when I have the pill for my birthday." Chapter 3849. Chapter 3849. Ongoing 2. Chapter 3849. Ongoing 2. The queen took a deep breath. That's enough. Get up." Princess Rao smiled with tears in her eyes. "Mother, would you like to help?" The queen jabbed a finger in her forehead. "If I don't help you, who am I going to help? Your brother?" After that, the queen gave some instructions to her maid, who nodded and quickly walked away. Princess Rao said, "Mother, you're..." The queen said, Your father dotes on concubine May these days. Let her go. Mother, that's brilliant. Princess Rao was over the moon. As expected, after Lady May coaxed the king away, the study was empty. Princess Rao finally let out a breath of relief and told her mother, "Mother, don't worry. I've arranged for someone in the study to burn the memorials. As for father, mother, how about you let him stay sick for a few days? When that happens, my brother and Huyenichin won't dare to disturb him, and the office head can only postpone the investigation indefinitely." The Empress frowned. "Your father isn't just anyone. I'm afraid that ordinary medicine." Just then, Princess Rao took a potion out of her chest pocket and handed it to the queen. The queen was confused. "What's that?" "It's a semi-divine potion," said Princess Rao in a low voice. "Let him drink it and he'll." The queen didn't like the idea, but Princess Rao kept persuading her and said, "My father is with concubine May. Even if something happens, concubine May will be the one to answer for it. So mother, what are you afraid of?" The queen agreed. If she could get rid of concubine May with this incident. "But I'm the one who recommended concubine May. She's still useful. It'll be such a shame to destroy her now." The queen sounded reluctant. Princess Rao smirked. "Mother, you're too kind. Haven't you noticed? Concubine May has been getting more and more disobedient in the past few months, and she's been behaving like a spoiled child now and then." The queen paled a little. Princess Rao said, "You did recommend her to the king, but now that she's earned my father's favor, she doesn't think it's because of you anymore. Mother, she's disloyal." "Raoshi." The queen's voice was authoritative. But Princess Rao wasn't afraid. "Mother, you have to prove that you can make her popular, but can also tramp her to death. That way she'll be obedient. Otherwise, she'll jump around even more and backfire on you. Can you accept that?" The queen was lost in her thoughts. Princess Rao was still trying to persuade her. "This is our best chance. Mother, we can kill two birds with one stone." The queen said, "I'll think about it." Semi-divine potion aside, things didn't go as smoothly as Princess Rao thought. That was because the study was on fire. Little Lu, the young eunuch, didn't know what happened. When His Majesty wasn't around, he opened the door and snuck in to look for the memorial. However, he couldn't find it after searching for a long time, and somehow, there was a fire all of a sudden. He didn't use any fire. Why was the room on fire all of a sudden? Little Lu was confused. Apart from him, there was only one mosquito flying around. To make it worse, when he tried to run, he realized that the door was locked. There was no way he could get away. Gosh, Little Lu thought he was going to lose his mind. Flames quickly swept across the study, which was filled with flammable paper and wood. Chapter 3850, Chapter 3850, Northern Yin Palace. Chapter 3850, Northern Yin Palace. The Queen and Princess Rao rose to their feet when they heard the news. The Queen threw a dirty look at Princess Rao. "Did you order someone to burn down the study?" Things would get out of hand if the study was burnt down. This wasn't a small matter anymore. It was a matter of great importance. All the officials would be involved, and it would get out of hand. Princess Rao was equally dumbfounded. She couldn't understand it. Everything had been going smoothly for her until recently. Now nothing seemed to go as planned. Everything seemed to have changed since she started targeting Feng Wu. The Queen threw a dirty look at Princess Rao. "You really didn't order the imperial study to be burnt down." Princess Rao tried to explain. "Mother, why should I burn the study? What good will it do for me?" The Queen agreed, but it was still troublesome. "Get rid of that eunuch before you're incriminated." She cast a stern look at Princess Rao. Princess Rao nodded and was about to get down to business, but Empress Duga stopped her. "Forget it. I'll take care of everything in the palace. Just stay out of it and pretend you don't know anything." Princess Rao immediately went up to the Queen and held her arm. "Mother, I know you're the best. When I become the crown princess, I'll share Northern Yin with you." The Queen liked the sound of that. She nodded with a smile. However, the eldest prince was behind this, and it wouldn't be so easy for the Queen to get rid of him. The more she tried, the more mistakes she would make. The eldest prince had never been so happy. Ever since his father put him on the same level as Princess Rao, he had been having a hard time. Princess Rao had the queen and the patriarch behind her, but he had no one but himself. As a result, he had been losing ground this whole time. However, it worked wonders when he teamed up with Feng Wu. He now had a lot of evidence on Princess Rao. Needless to say, the mosquito had set the study on fire. She was indeed a genius girl of the Junwu Empire. The prince sighed inwardly. He had no idea when she had come up with this plan, but it had slowly trapped Princess Rao. And Lady May. Suppressing his excitement, the prince went on with what he was going to do. After leaving Princess Rao to the prince, Feng Wu had nothing better to do. However, she didn't stay idle either, for she still remembered her goal. She had to see Huyan Yamba as soon as possible. I need to go to court, Feng Wu told Huyanichen. Huyanichen cried out. Go to court? Now. Feng Wu nodded. Now. Huyanichen was confused. What are we doing in court? Is it that urgent? Feng Wu nodded. Yes. I thought you wanted to take revenge for your sister. Huyanichen asked excitedly. Can we kill Huyan Hongjun now? Feng Wu shook her head. Soon. Huyanichen was excited. All right, I'll do it for you. But after we get to the imperial palace. Feng Wu said. Just send me to the prince. Feng Wu could have gone to court herself if she took a little risk, but since she had other means, why should she? Huyanichen went off to work, and he came back to report to Feng Wu 5 minutes later. Chapter 3851. Chapter 3851. Northern Yin Palace 2. Chapter 3851. Northern Yin Palace 2. Huyanichen was ready in 5 minutes. He told Feng Wu that she could go to court now. As expected, Huyanichen was a capable man. He escorted Feng Wu to the eldest prince. The prince was surprised to see Feng Wu, but with his capability, he could arrange for Feng Wu to stay with him. Just pretend to be my maid, said the prince. Feng Wu nodded. However, he was still curious. Why are you in such a hurry to go to court in the middle of the night? Feng Wu said simply. I'm waiting for someone. The prince asked. Who are we waiting for? Feng Wu smiled. Your patriarch, of course. Both the prince and Huyanichen stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. They trusted Feng Wu's capability, so they knew that she wasn't lying. If she said she was waiting for something, she probably was. The patriarch will be here today. How? The prince shook his head. Feng Wu glanced at him and said, Keep an eye on your father tonight. The prince's stomach lurched. My father? Before Feng Wu could say anything, she heard an anxious voice a short distance away. Master, quickly come to the plum garden. It was a young eunuch sent by the eldest prince. The prince couldn't help but glance at Feng Wu. Feng Wu nodded. I'm coming with you. The prince was about to say something when Feng Wu grinned. I'm a good doctor. I'm a semi-divine medicine refiner. Gosh. Both the prince and Huyanichen coughed. Huyanichen said grumpily. I would believe you if you said you were a supreme-level medicine refiner, but a semi-divine one? Don't make me laugh. Feng Wu shrugged. She wasn't joking this time, but the others didn't believe her. Fine. The prince quickly led Feng Wu toward Lady May's courtyard. Before they entered, they heard Lady May sobbing. I have no idea. His Majesty just suddenly. It was all my fault. She kept talking between broken sobs. Because of the fire in the study and the sudden stroke of the Northern Yin King, the imperial palace was in a mess. Many physicians were already treating the king when the prince went in, but they were all too terrified to do anything. Although the king had had a stroke, he was still conscious. He was staring at them with his terrifying eyes. The queen didn't expect this either. She had never expected that the potion would give the king a stroke. As a matter of fact, the king hadn't appointed an heir yet, and the patriarch had never mentioned that Princess Rao had gained his support. The princess had always been the one to talk about it. However, the officials were obviously on the prince's side. Therefore, it wouldn't do Princess Rao any good if the king died. The queen's face was livid, and the look she gave Princess Rao was rather frightening. Princess Rao was dumbfounded. Wasn't it a semi-divine potion? She had spent a small fortune on it to keep her father unconscious for a few days. That way, all eyes would be on her father's illness, and no one would bother him over such a petty matter. It was all part of Princess Rao's plan, but the king was indeed sick. He had a stroke and was physically paralyzed. However, his eyes were so wide open that he looked like he wanted to eat someone alive. Chapter 3852. Chapter 3852. Meet the Patriarch 1. Chapter 3852. Meet the Patriarch 1. King Yin was furious. He had no idea what was going on. He only came here to take a break at Concubine May's place when he heard that the study was on fire. He had to go to study as soon as he received the news, but somehow he fell out of bed. Not only did he crack his head, but he couldn't move either. It was as if he had had a stroke. Had he really had a stroke? The thought made the king uneasy, but the physicians didn't know what to do. Not only that, but they also tried to shirk responsibility from each other. No one dared to step out to take the blame, which infuriated the king. Even with the queen here, things didn't get any better. The king's eyes lit up when he thought of a certain person. He then stared at Princess Rao. Princess Rao didn't understand at first. She knelt in front of the king, held his hand and cried. The king was frustrated. He could barely move his eyes, but after trying his best, he only managed to twitch an eyelash. As it turned out, Princess Rao didn't understand at all. How stupid could she be? The eldest prince seemed to realize something and asked gingerly, "Father, do you mean that you want the patriarch to come here?" The king's eyelashes quivered again. It was very difficult to meet the patriarch, even for the king. But now that he was like this, the only person that could save him was the patriarch. Princess Rao immediately realized what he wanted. That's right. The patriarch is invincible. I'm sure he'll know what to do. I'm sure he can save my father. Wiping away her tears, Princess Rao looked at the king in delight. Father, please wait. I'll go to the patriarch now. If he doesn't come, I'll kneel and kowtow until he comes with me. The king was so pleased that his eyelashes quivered again. I'll go now. Princess Rao soon left. Meanwhile, the queen let out a breath of relief. As long as the patriarch was here, he would be able to save His Majesty. Moreover, after His Majesty was saved, half of the credit would go to Raoshi, which would benefit her greatly. At that thought, the queen smiled even wider. She had already forgotten that it was the eldest prince who had reminded her to bring the patriarch here. Meanwhile, the prince looked confused. It was obvious that the arrival of the patriarch would benefit Raoshi, but why did Feng Wu say that it would benefit him this time? That was right. Feng Wu had reminded him on their way here. Raoshi returned sooner than they expected. The king looked past her shoulder. Right now, Raoshi was all by herself. There was no one behind her. Was the patriarch not coming? The king panicked a little. He wasn't the only one. The others panicked as well. Was the patriarch away? Or was he unable to treat the king? No one thought that it was the second possibility, because he was omnipotent. However, the first thing Raoshi said was, "The patriarch is in the tower, but he said he wasn't coming, and that we should send my father to him." No one noticed that little Zhao, the king's eunuch, had been dragged to a corner. Chapter 3853. Chapter 3853. Meet the Patriarch 2. Chapter 3853. Meet the Patriarch 2. Feng Wu reacted quickly. She had planned for so long just to meet that legendary patriarch. She had thought that the patriarch would come here to treat the king. But the old man was more respected than she had expected. He had asked the apoplexy-stricken king to go to him. Under normal circumstances, Feng Wu wouldn't be able to get in. She could only see the old man if she became someone close to the king. Feng Wu had been lying in wait since the first time she met Princess Rao. No, she hadn't started even before meeting the princess, but it was time to take action. Soon, Feng Wu disguised herself as little Zhao, and the real one was hidden away by the eldest prince's men. That was how convenient it was to have someone in court. The eldest prince wasn't included in the group that headed for the tower. Thanks to Princess Rao's subtle hints over the years, everyone had come to the conclusion that she was the closest to the patriarch, who didn't like the eldest prince at all. In the end, the queen, Princess Rao, and a few eunuchs and maids went with the king. Little Zhao, whom Feng Wu had impersonated, was among them. Soon they arrived at the tower. The tower that wasn't open to outsiders had countless seals, and ordinary people couldn't get in. Right now, there was a giant eagle that was as tall as a grown man. It stood on its hind legs and stared coldly at the crowd. The seals on the door had been lifted, but the eagle wasn't happy to see so many people. It spoke in human language and sounded impatient. "No, there are too many people." The queen stepped out and smiled obsequiously. "We've left quite a few people behind, so that we won't disturb the patriarch. How about?" However, the eagle reprimanded her without hesitation. "Aren't you going to disturb all these people?" The queen blushed at the giant eagle's reprimand, but she didn't dare to retort. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was talking to Little Phoenix. "Is that bird?" Feng Wu asked curiously. However, Little Phoenix turned its head away and pretended that it didn't hear her. However, Feng Wu wasn't going to let it go. She asked with a smile, "Is it the eagle that has stopped you from going in and fighting with you?" Little Phoenix looked embarrassed and ignored Feng Wu. Feng Wu was laughing inwardly. By then, the eagle had finished scolding the queen and told them, "No more than 3. 3? That included the king." That was to say, apart from the king, only 2 people could go in. Both the king and Princess Rao had to go in. As for the rest of the people, Princess Rao smiled obsequiously. "Grandpa Eagle, when are we going to come out? Do we need to go into seclusion?" The giant eagle didn't like Princess Rao much and said coldly, "You're coming out when the king recovers. Do you want to leave alone? Opening the seal is a big deal." Princess Rao was rendered speechless. Feng Wu looked at Princess Rao in bewilderment. That didn't sound right. According to Princess Rao, the patriarch doted on her. Why would his eagle scold her? Moreover, it didn't show her any respect, and was only slightly better than when it spoke to the queen. It didn't take the princess long to make up her mind. She and the king would go in, and she would bring a maid with her. Of course, that was to take care of her father. Chapter 3854, Chapter 3854. Meet the Patriarch 3. Chapter 3854. Meet the Patriarch 3. However, when Princess Rao lowered her head, she didn't see a young eunuch quickly approach the eagle and stuff something under its wing. A bribe? The giant eagle smirked inwardly. It wasn't the kind of eagle that could be bought off. However, the giant eagle's eyes lit up when it saw what it was, and it put it away with a straight face. It said, "Only 2 people will come in. The king and you." After that, the giant eagle picked up one with each wing. One was the king, and the other one was Feng Wu. The seal began to close as soon as the giant eagle pulled the 2 of them in. By then, Princess Rao finally realized what had happened, but it was too late. Why is this happening? Princess Rao couldn't believe her eyes. She couldn't believe that the eagle had turned her away. The door quickly closed. Princess Rao and the queen looked at each other. It would be very difficult for them to go in now. The queen narrowed her eyes and gave Princess Rao a questioning look. Involuntarily, the princess lowered her gaze. The queen took a deep breath and fought back her anger. Luckily, they were all on the same side here, so there was no need to spread rumors. "I'm sure His Majesty will be all right." The queen left 2 people outside the tower, while she took Princess Rao back to the imperial palace. As for what the mother and daughter had discussed in the bedchamber behind closed doors, no one knew. All the maids in the imperial palace knew was that the queen had smashed a cup. Meanwhile, Feng Wu had been taken into the tower by the giant eagle, and the sealed door was closed. It was almost impossible for her to get out. Feng Wu was happy, but Little Phoenix was dumbfounded. "Are we in?" Little Phoenix couldn't believe its eyes. Feng Wu said matter-of-factly, "That's right." Little Phoenix said, "And that princess isn't qualified to come in." Feng Wu said matter-of-factly, "That's right." Little Phoenix said. Because you gave the ugly eagle something? Feng Wu chuckled. It's not just a little thing. It's something I found in the Hua family. Little Phoenix shook its head. Had it known that things would turn out this way, it would have saved Feng Wu all the trouble. So many things had happened, and so many things could have gone wrong. Little Phoenix was so frustrated. Feng Wu, on the other hand, didn't think Little Phoenix would bring itself to bribe the eagle. With her sharp eyes, Feng Wu could tell right away that the giant eagle was full of yang energy, and that the yin energy was damaged. It just so happened that she had stolen a treasure from the Hua family's vault that could nourish the yin energy, which was why the giant eagle was over the moon. It treated Feng Wu better than it treated the king. It put Feng Wu down first before putting the king down on the bed, and Feng Wu could tell it wasn't as gentle when it handled the latter. This giant eagle was an interesting bird. Apart from a stone bed, there was nothing else in the spacious room. The king's eyes were still wide open. That was to say, he could see and sense everything, but he couldn't speak or move. Chapter 3855. Chapter 3855. Meet the Patriarch 4. Chapter 3855. Meet the Patriarch 4. Feng Wu wondered when the Patriarch would arrive. She was a little excited at the thought that she would soon meet her legendary sixth senior brother. Before long, the stone door opened on its own. Feng Wu and the giant eagle looked in the direction of the door. An old man with white hair and beard walked out of the door with an indifferent look on his face. The look in his eyes was so cold that no one dared to approach him. The giant eagle dared to scold the queen, but when the old man was around, it lowered its head obediently. It's him! It's him! Little Phoenix's excited voice rang out in Feng Wu's head, and it murmured, "But why is he like this? Why is he so old? He's as ugly as everyone else when he's old." Little Phoenix's last sentence almost amused Feng Wu, and she had to fight back her laughter. However, it still caught the Patriarch's attention. He turned his sharp gaze on Feng Wu. Feng Wu immediately lowered her head, and didn't dare to make any unnecessary movements. The old man didn't pay much attention to Feng Wu. After all, she was playing a young eunuch now. The Patriarch walked up to the Emperor, examined him, and checked his pulse. Emperor Yan was relieved to see the Patriarch. The old man was omnipotent, so he was sure that he would be all right. However, he frowned as soon as he checked the king's pulse. Before long, he heaved a long sigh and shook his head. What was that supposed to mean? The old man said, "It's not easy to treat you." The king was dumbfounded. The old man shook his head again. "No one can cure you." The king was shocked. What happened to the omnipotent Patriarch? Was he going to stay this way forever? The king struggled violently and had a strong desire to live. He didn't want to stay bedridden like this. He still had his kingdom to run and his ambitions to achieve. However, the Patriarch heaved a long sigh. "If my master were here, he might be able to save you. I'm not good at medicine, so there's nothing I can do." The old man looked frustrated and sad. He looked up at the small window on the east side and said, "Master, where are you? I've missed you." He burst into tears after that. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. She had always thought that the Patriarch was an invincible ruler, but as it turned out, he was someone who would cry. Little Phoenix said grumpily, "I told you already. Yamba was picked up by your master when he was little. He used to cry all the time. He's old now, but he's still like that." Feng Wu didn't know what to say when she saw the way Little Phoenix commented on the Patriarch. He was the Patriarch of Northern Yen, not a crybaby. If other people heard what the bird said, they would probably kill Little Phoenix. The king looked at the old man in resignation. He was probably used to the old man's nostalgia for his master, so he remained very calm. Chapter 3856. Chapter 3856. Junior Sister 1. Chapter 3856. Junior Sister 1. "Help me." The king had no choice but to remind the Patriarch. He used all his strength to say those words. The Patriarch glanced at the king and heaved a sigh. "I'll send you some spiritual essence. That's my only option." Let's see how much it can help you. Cure him? That was impossible. The king couldn't believe his eyes. Wasn't the patriarch supposed to be omnipotent? But he was right. The patriarch was indeed an expert in refining weapons, but his medical skills. As expected, when the patriarch injected his spiritual essence into the king's internal organs, it did help with his condition. At least he could talk now. Thank you, master. The king let out a breath of relief. It was already a big step for him to be able to speak again. He just needed to hold on a little longer. However, as soon as he thought that, the patriarch shattered his hope. Don't overthink it. I've done everything I can. There's nothing else I can do, the patriarch said indifferently. The king was baffled. Although he could speak, he still couldn't move. Master, what should I? The king had a lot of respect for the patriarch. The patriarch waved his hand and said calmly, Unfortunately, my second senior brother isn't here. He's the best doctor. If we can find him, we may be able to treat you. Then where can we? The king asked. The old man looked nostalgic again. He waved his hand and rose to his feet. Master, the king panicked. What was going on? Was he going to be like this forever? However, the old man didn't stop just because of that. Just then the young eunuch, who had been standing next to the king's bed, moved. He ran after the old man. The king was pleased. Little Zhao was indeed a loyal servant. Meanwhile, little Zhao followed the patriarch out of the room. The old man frowned when he heard the noise, but he didn't linger. No one could catch up with him. Just then, Feng Wu suddenly called out, Huyan Yamba. Feng Wu's voice almost frightened the eagle to death. That name. It threw a dirty look at Feng Wu and was going to drag her out. However, at that moment, a little bird flew out and blocked the eagle's way. The two birds started fighting right away. Huyan Yamba. The patriarch stopped abruptly when he heard that name. It had been years since anyone used that name, so long that he had forgotten about it. He suddenly turned around and saw a young eunuch standing a short distance away. Looking past Feng Wu, the old man looked to his left and right, but there was no one there. He must have been hallucinating. Senior brother Huyan. Feng Wu wiped the disguise off her face and showed him her real face. The patriarch narrowed his eyes. That face. You. Patriarch Huyan quickly walked up to Feng Wu and stared at her. Your junior sister. Are you really her? He was thrilled. Although there's only a 50% to 60% resemblance. Are you really my junior sister? Exhilarated, Patriarch Huyan burst into tears. Chapter 3857. Chapter 3857. Junior Sister 2. Chapter 3857. Junior Sister 2. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She had thought that it would take a lot of effort to convince her sixth senior brother. But as it turned out, he was already addressing her as junior sister. Feng Wu was confused. How do you know I'm her? Patriarch Huyan nodded repeatedly. Yes, you look just like her. Although you don't look exactly the same, you're definitely my junior sister. I didn't know you were really reincarnated. You're so cruel. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. What reincarnation? What cruelty? She didn't understand. Feng Wu wanted to ask more questions, but Master Huyan suddenly stopped and smiled bitterly. Oh my, what am I talking about? Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. Patriarch Huyan waved his hands repeatedly. The secrets of heaven can't be divulged. If that happens, my master will kill me when he comes back. By the way, Patriarch Huyan's eyes lit up. Grabbing Feng Wu, he asked excitedly, Junior sister, where's my master? Have you seen him? Is he really alive? Feng Wu asked. How do you know that? Patriarch Huyan said excitedly. My master is invincible and omnipotent. He's survived 10,000 tribulations, and he's been everywhere. How can he be dead? Even if everyone in this world is dead, he's still alive. Feng Wu thought. This old man is such a loyal fan of my beautiful master. Feng Wu looked back at the stone room. Only then did Patriarch Huyan realize what was going on. He told the eagle. Take him back to the imperial palace. He couldn't talk to his junior sister, while an outsider was there. He had a lot of questions for his junior sister. Just then Feng Wu chuckled. If we send the king out, everyone will know that their patriarch isn't omnipotent. The old man said grumpily, I never am. They can say whatever they want. Feng Wu said, isn't that a humiliation to our sect? The old man said, too bad that your second senior brother died in the war. Otherwise his medical skills would be incredible. He can treat anything. He's a semi-divine medicine refiner, second only to my master. A semi-divine medicine refiner? Feng Wu rubbed her chin. Patriarch Huyan nodded. That's right. He's very impressive. Unfortunately. Before he could finish, Feng Wu smiled. Sixth senior brother, I can treat the king. Patriarch Huyan looked at Feng Wu in amazement. He didn't think his junior sister could do it, because she didn't have medical skills back then. Feng Wu nodded. Yes, I can. I'm the reason he's like this now. After that, Feng Wu told him everything, starting from how she came all the way from the Zhenhua Empire to see Huyan Yanba. After much hardship, she finally arrived at the northern Yan kingdom, but was stopped by the tower. She was going to fly Little Phoenix in, but the bird couldn't make it. In the end, she had no choice but to use this method. Patriarch Huyan's mouth fell open. Was his junior sister still so capable after she reincarnated? She had single-handedly shaken the entire northern Yan kingdom and dragged the king down with her. That was incredible. Wait, Brother Phoenix. Patriarch Huyan cried out. Looking over his shoulder, he saw a little bird on Feng Wu's shoulder. Chapter 3858. Chapter 3858. Junior Sister 3. Chapter 3858. Junior Sister 3. It reminded him of when the bird used to stand on his master's shoulder. Patriarch Huyan was so excited that his face turned scarlet red, and he burst into tears. Brother Phoenix. Seeing Little Phoenix, Master Huyan was so excited that he almost burst into tears again. Feng Wu sighed inwardly. Little Phoenix was right. The old man was indeed a crybaby. When Little Phoenix landed on Huyan Yanba's shoulder, the giant eagle shuddered. What the heck? They knew the patriarch. Little Phoenix was complaining to Patriarch Huyan and wouldn't stop talking. It even glanced at the giant eagle, which scared the latter out of its wits. How dare that bird stop you? I'll smack it for you. Patriarch Huyan was on Little Phoenix's side. The giant eagle almost burst into tears, but it didn't say that it knew you. The giant eagle was a very capable cultivator at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage. It could stop Little Phoenix, and everyone would address it as Master Eagle. Even if the queen was here, it could use the power of Master Huyan to scold her. But now it was terrified. Master Huyan didn't expect that Master Phoenix, who used to be so capable, couldn't even defeat a little eagle. He felt so sorry for the bird. However, it pained Patriarch Huyan to hear what Little Phoenix said about Feng Wu. Junior sister, you've lost your cultivation ability, haven't you? Patriarch Huyan checked Feng Wu's pulse in a hurry. Good. It's only temporary. If it's permanent, even the primordial heaven pill will be useless. Patriarch Huyan let out a breath of relief and led Feng Wu inside. Our master let me hold on to such a pill, and I've been guarding it for you for years. I didn't expect to see you here. Recalling a rumor, Feng Wu asked curiously, but sixth senior brother, didn't they say that Princess Raoshi would be given this pill for her birthday this year? However, Patriarch Huyan's eyes widened. Raoshi? Who's that? Feng Wu cleared her throat and pointed at the king. His daughter. Oh, you mean her, said Patriarch Huyan. She does come here quite often to clean the tower, but she never stays long, and she's not allowed inside. By the way, what did you say? What about her birthday? Feng Wu was astonished. Cleaning? Did Princess Raoshi come to the tower just to clean the place? But Feng Wu remembered that the rumor she heard was. Feng Wu couldn't help but ask that question. Patriarch Huyan frowned. She's here to clean the room, isn't she? With a bucket and a cloth? The last part of the question was directed at the giant eagle. After all, there was only one person and one eagle in the tower. The giant eagle nodded. That's right. She'll be here in 2 days. You'll see. Taking Feng Wu's hand, Patriarch Huyan said, "Let's go. Your cultivation level is the most important thing. You don't need to worry about such petty things." After that, he tried to drag Feng Wu away. Feng Wu tossed a bottle of potion to the eagle. "This is to treat the king. 1 dose a day, and he'll be fine in 3 days." The giant eagle immediately said yes. Patriarch Huyan, on the other hand, didn't have time for such petty things. Ever since Feng Wu showed up, he had been paying all his attention to her. All he could think of was how to help Feng Wu recover her ability and improve her physical strength. Chapter 3859. Chapter 3859. Junior Sister 4. Chapter 3859. Junior Sister 4. Here we go. Patriarch Huyan smacked his own head. How could I have forgotten about it? The pill is meant for you. Let's go. He dragged Feng Wu away. In the main hall, Patriarch Huyan checked Feng Wu's pulse again and let out a breath of relief. Good. You'll be back to normal in 3 days. After that, he took out the treasure he had been keeping for years and handed it to Feng Wu. This is the primary heaven pill. Take it. Feng Wu finally saw the legendary pill. It was the size of a baby's fist and was as fair and plump as a steamed bun. However, the dense spiritual essence was almost spilling out of the pill. One breath and Feng Wu felt as if all her cells had been activated. The spiritual essence was so dense that it seemed to reach her soul. Feng Wu looked at the patriarch in amazement. Should I swallow it? Shaking his head, Patriarch Huyan said earnestly, hold it in your hand and slowly bring the spiritual essence into your meridians. That's not enough. In the end, you'll have to integrate it into your body. When that happens, His eyes lit up. When that happens, you'll be as brilliant as a star. Junior sister, this is the only primary heaven pill in the world. My master made it himself. There's no second one. Feng Wu suddenly became curious. Rumor has it that the pill will die down in a few days, and the effect will start to wear off. So, everyone is saying that you're going to give it to Princess Raoshi. Is that just a rumor? Patriarch Huyan said grumpily. No matter how weak the pill becomes, it's still a divine-level pill. If you weren't here, why would I give it to someone else? I can take it myself. Seeing the angry look on his face, Feng Wu chuckled. Princess Raoshi's behavior reminded her of someone else. Don't overthink it. Your top priority now is your cultivation and physical quality. Patriarch Huyan poked his junior sister's forehead affectionately. Forget about it. You don't have any spiritual essence now, and we can't let that happen anymore. With your weak physical quality, killing you will be as easy as killing an ant. If anything happens to you, I'll never forgive myself. Patriarch Huyan let Feng Wu start, but he didn't go out himself. Not only did he have to guard Feng Wu, but he also had to send her spiritual essence to help with her cultivation. Time ticked by. Just as Patriarch Huyan said, Feng Wu was slowly getting her cultivation ability back. Spiritual Master, Spiritual Grandmaster, Spiritual Elder. She soon reached the peak of the Spiritual King stage. Before, Feng Wu was already a junior spiritual overlord, but now, she had reached the peak of the Spiritual King stage in a day. Seeing the rapid increase in Feng Wu's cultivation level, Master Huyan was baffled as well. His junior sister seemed to be even more talented than she used to be. That was incredible. She was only in her teens, but she was already. However, before he knew it, Feng Wu had become a junior spiritual overlord. Master Huyan was speechless. He had expected that the girl would only become a junior spiritual overlord at most, but to his surprise, Feng Wu's cultivation level was still rising. Chapter 3860, Chapter 3860, Peak Spiritual Overlord 1. Chapter 3860, Peak Spiritual Overlord 1. After surpassing the Junior Spiritual Overlord stage, Feng Wu's cultivation level was still rising. Patriarch Huyan cried out inwardly. That girl was incredible. She had recovered so much in one go. Patriarch Huyan only let out a breath of relief when he saw that the pill in Feng Wu's hand was almost gone. He was worried that the girl would break through to the spiritual saint stage in one go. If that was the case, she wouldn't be able to keep up with her cultivation. He hoped that she wouldn't explode. As expected, Feng Wu stopped when she reached the peak of the spiritual overlord stage. And she had just used up the pill. A little more. She just needed a little more to reach the spiritual saint stage, didn't she? Patriarch Huyan thought to himself. It only took Feng Wu a day to go from a good-for-nothing to a peak spiritual overlord. All she needed to do now was to consolidate her physical quality. With Patriarch Huyan's help, Feng Wu began to train her physical body. The primary heaven pill was indeed the best pill in the world. Not only did it restore Feng Wu's spiritual essence, but it was also quickly tempering her body. Feng Wu had refined the muscles, tendons, and skin beforehand, and she was working on her bones now. Hearing the cracking sounds in Feng Wu's bones, Patriarch Huyan almost couldn't sit still. That was fast. From Patriarch Huyan's past experience, although the primary heaven pill was powerful, it shouldn't have taken effect so fast. It had only been a short while, but she had already finished refining her bones. Other people might not be able to do it even after years. After that, Patriarch Huyan watched as Feng Wu moved on to her internal organs. The internal organs were a very fragile part of the human body, and it was extremely difficult to cultivate that part. But Feng Wu, Patriarch Huyan was dumbfounded again. The girl went on smoothly. In a matter of hours, her internal organs had been turned into iron walls. Normal people wouldn't be able to destroy her internal organs so easily. According to Patriarch Huyan's estimation, Feng Wu's physical cultivation level was about the same as that of a spiritual overlord. That was to say, if a junior spiritual overlord took action, Feng Wu would be invincible, and the opponent wouldn't be able to break through her defense. To Patriarch Huyan's disbelief, the girl went on. After refining his bones and internal organs, she began to refine her marrow. It was common knowledge that bones were easy to build, but cultivating the bone marrow was unbelievably difficult. The difficulty of reaching the intermediate level of the spiritual overlord stage was equivalent to that of refining one's marrow. Feng Wu closed her eyes again and focused on her refinement. Her face had gone ghastly pale. You'll be drained if you keep refining it. You can't do it anymore. Patriarch Huyan was worried about the girl. No matter how talented a person was, or how exquisite the medicine was, they couldn't withstand such hard work. However, Feng Wu wouldn't listen to him. The primary heaven pill is such a rare opportunity that it'll be better if I can make some progress as soon as possible. The Northern Yin Kingdom is too dangerous for me. Feng Wu sat down cross-legged and spoke in a trembling voice. Patriarch Huyan could tell that Feng Wu was exhausted. In the past, no one would dare to defy him. However, the girl wouldn't listen to him now, and there was nothing he could do. Then refine the marrow. After that, you'll have to listen to me. You can't refine anymore. All right, Feng Wu said. Chapter 3861. Chapter 3861. Peak Spiritual Overlord 2. Chapter 3861. Peak Spiritual Overlord 2. It was true. By the time Feng Wu finished refining the marrow, most of the spiritual essence she had accumulated was gone. Luckily, the effect of the primary heaven pill was still there. Feng Wu closed her eyes and worked on her recovery. For the past 3 days, Patriarch Huyan had been taking care of Feng Wu and injected a lot of spiritual essence into her. He had turned paler, and his smooth face had wrinkles on it. He looked 5 years older. However, Patriarch Huyan didn't seem to mind at all. He only smiled at the girl in satisfaction. That was great. He had thought that he was all alone in this world, but he had never expected to have such a family member. All the more reason for him to stay alive and protect this girl. His master would be so sorry if she was bullied. 3 days later, Feng Wu finally finished her cultivation and slowly opened her eyes. That's amazing. Patriarch Huyan gave Feng Wu a thumbs up. Feng Wu had examined her own body. She had reached the peak of the spiritual overlord stage and had refined her bone marrow. That was such a big improvement. Feng Wu was elated. She hadn't suffered for nothing after all. The journey with the Gao family had been slow, but it had been safe. Moreover, she had been able to be involved in ordinary people's lives. Hence, she had learned a lot, which was why she was able to reach the peak of the spiritual overlord stage so quickly. Little Phoenix was amazed when it saw Feng Wu. It ran around her and cried out, "A spiritual overlord? You're a peak spiritual overlord already?" "Ah!" Little Phoenix cried out in excitement. That was true. Feng Wu was only a junior spiritual overlord when she left the Zhenwu Empire a few months ago. When Jun Linyuan was around, she had a wonderful time. Without Jun Linyuan, her life was miserable. She was hunted everywhere, and she ran as fast as she could. Finally, she was a peak spiritual overlord. The bird was a peak spiritual overlord, and so was Feng Wu. Only a handful of people in this world could hunt them down now. Little Phoenix was thrilled. One day, the bird would become Master Phoenix again. Feng Sun will cry his eyes out if he knows what you're capable of now, Little Phoenix added. Feng Wu cleared her throat uneasily. Feng Wu remembered that Feng Sun was indeed a junior spiritual overlord. Back in the Peace Grassland, Feng Sun was a rank higher than her. If she went to the Peace Grassland now, at that thought, Feng Wu was intrigued. Patriarch Huyan looked at Feng Wu in amazement. You used to be a junior spiritual overlord. Feng Wu nodded. Patriarch Huyan stroked his beard. Your breakthrough is indeed a little too fast. No one can rise from junior to the peak in such a short time. How many levels are there in between? Little Phoenix nudged Patriarch Huyan. Teehee little Yamba. You have no idea how talented our girl is. She's even more talented than before. Maybe she'll just be a little less accomplished than our master in the future. Patriarch Huyan nodded. He had realized in the past few days that she was indeed very talented. After all, Little Phoenix worshipped Mu Jiuzhou the most, so even if it had to compliment Feng Wu, it would mention Mu Jiuzhou first. Patriarch Huyan was even more so. He was Mu Jiuzhou's biggest fan, and no one could surpass his master. Chapter 3862. Chapter 3862. Peak Spiritual Overlord 3. Chapter 3862. Peak Spiritual Overlord 3. Unfortunately, my master will never see my junior sister like this again. Patriarch Huyan sounded aggrieved as he spoke, and tears rolled down his cheeks. Why is my master gone? How? Seeing that he was crying again, Little Phoenix was speechless and turned to Feng Wu. Feng Wu rubbed her temples. She finally realized that her sixth senior brother was indeed prone to crying. He was so arrogant and omnipotent in front of the king and the others. But who knew what he was like behind their backs? She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Feng Wu patted him on the arm. Senior brother Huyan. Junior sister, will never see master again, never. I often dream that master is still alive, and we're still living carefreely by his side. All our senior brothers are there too. Patriarch Huyan pounded his chest and stomped his foot as he cried. Feng Wu said, Says who? Master is still alive. However, Patriarch Huyan wouldn't believe her. Senior sister, please don't make fun of me. Although I often mistakenly think that my master is still alive, after so many years. He burst into tears again. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. Meanwhile, Little Phoenix shrugged and looked at Feng Wu in resignation, as if saying, I told you so. Feng Wu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She poked Patriarch Huyan with a finger. Senior brother Huyan, it's true. My master is still alive. Patriarch Huyan said. You said that master is still alive. Where is he? Feng Wu said. He's in a very safe place now, and we won't see him until the time is right. But don't worry, he'll wake up. Patriarch Huyan wiped his tears and gave his junior sister a pleading look. Really? Feng Wu rubbed his head. It's true. Trust me. My master is still alive. He's still alive. Patriarch Huyan sobbed. However, he felt that he was in such a sorry state, so he turned around and wiped his tears. From behind, his shrugging shoulders showed how excited he was. Feng Wu patted him on the shoulder and asked curiously, By the way, you mentioned our 3 senior brothers just then. Are you in touch with them? The mention of that infuriated Patriarch Huyan. No. He snorted. Wait, there seemed to be more to it. Feng Wu asked curiously, then why is that? She had seen her third senior brother from afar. It was proof that he was still alive. Patriarch Huyan waved his hand. It's nothing good. Kiddo, don't ask. Feng Wu almost stomped her foot. What was wrong with these people? When she asked for the truth, they all told her not to ask. Senior brother, I'm not a child anymore. I'm already a peak spiritual overlord. Feng Wu said as she showed him her biceps. Patriarch Huyan rolled his eyes at her. Even if you're a peak spiritual overlord, you're still in your teens. It's not for you to worry about. Be a good girl and don't ask. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. It seemed to be something so important that even a peak spiritual overlord wasn't qualified to take part. She was so curious. Chapter 3863. Chapter 3863. Peak Spiritual Overlord 4. Chapter 3863. Peak Spiritual Overlord 4. Just then, they heard a noise outside. Feng Wu was confused. What's outside? It just so happened that Feng Wu's cultivation level and physical strength had been refined, and she could come out now. She came out to find the giant eagle. The giant eagle stumbled back as soon as it saw Feng Wu. The feeling Feng Wu gave it was completely different from 3 days ago. 3 days ago, she was just an ordinary girl, but now she gave out a dangerous feeling. You, the giant eagle took a deep breath. You're a peak spiritual overlord. Feng Wu was amazed. You can tell. The eagle said grumpily. I'm not blind. Feng Wu was confused. But I have the concealing jade with me. Isn't it supposed to cover my tracks? The giant eagle snorted. Patriarch Huyan smacked the eagle on the head. How can you talk to your Ant Master like that? Ant Master. The bird didn't know what to say. Patriarch Huyan glanced at the giant eagle and said sternly, Why aren't you greeting your Ant Master? Patriarch Huyan was a crybaby when he was around Feng Wu and Little Phoenix. But when he was around other people, he was like a real patriarch and an invincible figure. He didn't get angry, but was very intimidating. The giant eagle cringed right away. It glanced at Patriarch Huyan and saw that the old man's face had darkened. It lowered its head and greeted Feng Wu, calling her little Ant Master. Feng Wu tossed it another pill. The giant eagle was elated, and its eyes lit up. However, it didn't dare to take the bribe this time. Instead, it carefully observed Patriarch Huyan. Patriarch Huyan stood there proudly with his hands behind his back. Seeing the look in the eagle's eyes, the old man snorted. That's a greeting gift from your Ant Master. Take it. Yes, the giant eagle was very excited, and it carefully put away the treasure. That was the most useful treasure. Little Ant Master was the best. The giant eagle didn't think that there was anything wrong with a senior being intimidated by a teenage kid. Frustrated, Little Phoenix nudged Patriarch Huyan with its wings. Patriarch Huyan looked at it in bewilderment. Me. Little Phoenix stared at him. Only then did Patriarch Huyan realize what the bird meant. He nodded at the eagle. The giant eagle felt uneasy. It had fought Little Phoenix before, and the bird had been defeated. It had even kicked the bird out. Not only that, but the giant eagle had also wondered if it should stew the bird and eat it. Now that things had turned around, the giant eagle wanted to cry. The patriarch used to say that this was a world that valued martial prowess above everything else, and one's fists were everything. But now, come here and pay your respects to your younger martial uncle. Seeing the look on the eagle's face, Patriarch Huyan couldn't help but frown and beckoned it over. The giant eagle didn't like the sound of that at all. Next to them, Little Phoenix stuck out its tail and mimicked Feng Wu's action. It reminded Feng Wu of a despicable person who had gotten what he wanted. Feng Wu found it hilarious. Patriarch Huyan's face darkened. The giant eagle, which had scolded the queen without hesitation, looked up at Patriarch Huyan with a pitiful look on its face and said angrily, Didn't you say that this world cares only about martial prowess? That bird can't defeat me. Little Phoenix said proudly, Are you not convinced? The giant eagle raised its chin and said proudly, I just can't accept it. Chapter 3864, Chapter 3864. Keep it to yourself, L. Chapter 3864. Keep it to yourself, L. Little Phoenix waved its paw like a boss. If you don't like it, keep it to yourself. Feng Wu almost burst out laughing. Why did the bird copy her? Moreover, she was never that proud. She was supposed to be such a lovely girl. Little Phoenix threw a dirty look at Feng Wu, telling her to keep her silence. Feng Wu nodded and turned away. The eagle was furious. You, Patriarch Huyen, didn't know what to do. Feng Wu tugged at her sixth senior brother. Just leave them be and let them fight among themselves. We'll talk after they figure out who's the winner. Feeling aggrieved, Little Phoenix glared at Feng Wu. Aren't you going to help me? Feng Wu glanced at it. You can't even defeat your junior martial nephew. How dare you call yourself its martial uncle? Little Phoenix was furious. Aye. Seeing that Feng Wu was on its side, the giant eagle immediately felt that Feng Wu was the best person in the world. Its eyes twinkled. Just then Feng Wu remembered something. Gosh, how could I have forgotten? Little Zhao was no longer here after she turned back into Feng Wu. The king wasn't stupid, so of course he would be suspicious. Hence Feng Wu asked the eagle, "How's His Majesty doing?" The giant eagle was too busy bickering with Little Phoenix to hear what Feng Wu said. Having no other choice, Feng Wu had to go in herself. The king was in a bad condition before and couldn't move at all. However, he was much better now and could move a little, but he still couldn't get out of bed. He was confused when he saw Feng Wu. Feng Wu examined him carefully and said, "You'll be able to move soon. Don't worry." The king looked alarmed. "Who are you?" Feng Wu took out a tube of medicine and injected it into the tube. She then pushed the tube upward, and a few drops of liquid gushed out. Emperor Yan's stomach lurched when he saw the medicine. He had never seen such a needle before. "What are you going to do to me? Get out! Get out!" The king panicked. Feng Wu thought, "I didn't know that kings could panic. Emperor Wu is much better than this one, and Jun Linyuan is much better than his father." While the king was shouting, Master Huyan came in and stood behind Feng Wu. Patriarch. In front of the old master, the king wasn't the supreme ruler anymore. He was like a youngster who admired his father. Right now, he was looking eagerly at the old master. Patriarch Huyan threw a dirty look at him. "Shut up." Hence, the king immediately shut up and didn't say another word. He only looked a little aggrieved. The patriarch turned to Feng Wu in surprise. "You're a good doctor, aren't you?" Feng Wu adjusted the injection and nodded. Come to think of it, Feng Wu was the reason that the king was in such a state, and after what he had gone through. Although Feng Wu wasn't going to let him know the truth, she still had to save him. She didn't want to owe him anything, so she had to get it over with. Patriarch Huyan asked curiously, "What level are you?" Feng Wu stared at the syringe in her hand and casually said, "I'm a semi-divine medicine refiner now." The king was astonished. The patriarch gave Feng Wu a strange look. "You're already a semi-divine medicine refiner? Have you learned all the master's skills?" Chapter 3865. Chapter 3865. Keep it to yourself, too. Chapter 3865. Keep it to yourself, too. Feng Wu said indifferently, "I haven't been able to learn them all. If I could, I would be a divine medicine refiner at the very least. I only know a limited amount." Master Huyan didn't know what to say. The girl was only in her teens, and she had reincarnated. She had no memory of what happened in her previous life. That was unbelievable. Patriarch Huyan didn't think Feng Wu was bragging, for that was how things worked in his sect. All his fellow disciples were geniuses, or his master wouldn't have taken them in. The king didn't believe it at first, but when he saw Patriarch Huyan's attitude toward Feng Wu, he immediately changed his attitude. "Are you really a semi-divine medicine refiner?" The king didn't dare to underestimate the teenage girl. He thought to himself, maybe she's over 100 years old, but she just looked young. Feng Wu had no idea what was going on in his head. She only said indifferently, "Give me your hand." The king obediently held out his hands. Feng Wu grabbed one of the hands, and injected the tube of medicine. The king felt the pain at first, but it soon disappeared. He only looked at Feng Wu in amazement. Are you trying to save me? Because he had seen with his own eyes how special Patriarch Huyen was toward Feng Wu, he didn't dare to act like a king in front of Feng Wu. Feng Wu nodded with a straight face. The king nodded. He didn't dare to criticize Feng Wu for her aloofness. Instead, he thought that was what a genius doctor should be like. However, the king was confused. Well, may I ask where my eunuch is? He had been taken care of since he was little, but the eagle couldn't be bothered. The bird thought it was already very kind of it to feed him on time. Right now, the king didn't feel very comfortable. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. She had forgotten about it. She had to get little Zhao here. Hence, after the injection, Feng Wu turned around and told the giant eagle, I'll write a letter. Bring the eldest prince here. The giant eagle nodded obediently. The king no longer had any doubts about Feng Wu's identity. The giant eagle didn't even talk to him, the king, but this girl. Junior sister. Soon Patriarch Huyen led Feng Wu away. The king's eyes widened. He couldn't believe his ears. He had thought that the girl was the patriarch's new pupil, but as it turned out, she was his junior sister. Although the king had heard that the patriarch was Mu Jiuzhou's pupil, it was only a rumor. No one knew who his master really was. But now, a junior sister had shown up out of nowhere. That was to say, she really was a senior. Her status was higher than he had expected. Could she really be an old lady? The king thought to himself. Feng Wu told the giant eagle to deliver the message. The giant eagle usually stayed in the tower. Of course, when the patriarch went into seclusion, it would take a walk in the dark when it was bored. Therefore it was quite familiar with the capital city. Where should the eldest prince be? The giant eagle racked its brain with a letter in its mouth. Chapter 3866. Chapter 3866. Keep it to yourself 3. Chapter 3866. Keep it to yourself 3. He had to be in the royal palace, right? The giant eagle then swaggered toward the palace. Needless to say, the giant eagle was stopped outside the gate. But Patriarch Huyen's spiritual pet was a different story. It leaped over the gate and headed for the inner courtyard of the imperial palace. The guards at the gate were worried sick. However, it alarmed the secret guards of the inner courtyard. The giant eagle had been with the patriarch when the king worshipped the ancestors, so the secret guards recognized the bird. They didn't dare to do anything, and could only follow it from afar. The giant eagle didn't know where the eldest prince lived. It flapped its wings and shouted, Your Royal Highness! Your Royal Highness! As for what the prince's name was, sorry, it didn't know. Things weren't looking good for the prince at the moment. The patriarch and the queen were said to be supporting Princess Rao, but the prince had no one. The king was indeed on his side, but if he really had a stroke and couldn't speak, the prince thought that Princess Rao would have a very high chance of winning. He was a little frustrated. Princess Rao also knew that she had the upper hand. Therefore, she had launched a few attacks, and the prince had lost quite a few men. While the prince was disappointed and Princess Rao was gloating, there was a strange noise in the air. After all, the eagle spoke in a strange way. Everyone in the imperial palace heard its voice. The entire imperial palace knew there was a visitor. Quan Shi, the crown prince's guard, told him that it was a giant eagle, which belonged to Patriarch Huyen. The prince's heart skipped a beat. Had something happened? He had sent Feng Wu in with a disguise earlier, and little Zhao was still locked up here. If he was caught, the prince panicked a little. Soon the giant eagle arrived. It wasn't alone. Princess Rao, the queen, and many other people in the palace were there as well. The queen thought that the giant eagle was here for revenge, so she brought a bunch of palace ladies who were there to pay her respects. Hence, they all gathered in the eldest prince's residence. Seeing the prince, the giant eagle was about to throw the envelope at him out of habit, but then it recalled what Feng Wu said. Well, the giant eagle cleared its throat and asked, So you're the eldest prince? The prince nodded. Read it then. The giant eagle mimicked little phoenix and crossed its wings. It looked very proud. The giant eagle found the posture proud and confident, which showed how wise it was. Suppressing his nervous feeling, the crown prince began to read the letter. He saw the signature first. It was Feng Wu. What was going on? Since when was Feng Wu bold enough to sign her own name? Moreover, she had even sent Grandpa Eagle out to deliver a letter. What was wrong with this girl? She didn't look like she had done anything wrong. They greeted the eagle respectfully. Even the king had to talk to the eagle nicely, so of course, the queen didn't dare to offend it. Princess Rao greeted him as well as if she was very close to the giant eagle. Seeing that she still needed to clean the tower every day, the giant eagle nodded at her. That simple reply was enough to make Princess Rao very pleased with herself. She was the only one who could walk into the tower and get close to the patriarch. As expected, the others all looked envious. In northern Yan, Patriarch Huyan was the ultimate protector, and his only spiritual pet, the giant eagle, was also an outstanding figure. Chapter 3867, Chapter 3867. Keep it to yourself for? Chapter 3867. Keep it to yourself for? The giant eagle didn't have time for this. It only glanced at the prince and asked, "Are you done?" The prince nodded immediately. The giant eagle snorted. "Let's go then." The prince was filled with questions, but there were so many people around, and he couldn't bring himself to ask. Hence, he nodded and left with the giant eagle. Many people saw the look on his face when he left. He didn't seem very happy. That was to say, it wasn't good news. Seeing that the giant eagle was only taking the prince away, Princess Rao quickly followed it and asked gingerly, "Grandpa Eagle, what happened? Why wouldn't the eagle take her?" However, before she could ask that question, the giant eagle said coldly, "Don't ask questions you shouldn't ask." Princess Rao nodded obediently and didn't dare to say another word. The prince couldn't help but glance at her. Wasn't the patriarch supposed to dote on her and support her? Wasn't he going to give her the primary heaven pill? Why didn't the eagle show her any respect? Moreover, the prince had a feeling that the eagle seemed to treat him better than his sister. It was so strange. At that thought, the prince rubbed his nose and was confused. Soon they arrived at the tower. Normally, no one was allowed to enter the tower, but the giant eagle was guarding it, so of course, it could bring the prince in. Then the prince realized that he had walked in just like that. What he didn't know was that all the ladies and princesses had gathered around Princess Rao and were asking her what was going on. The queen glanced at Princess Rao, who immediately said, "Maybe my brother has done something to offend the master. Otherwise, Grandpa Eagle wouldn't have arrested him." Arrest? It was a severe enough punishment for ordinary people, but for the prince, it was like a thunderclap on a sunny day. Because of what Princess Rao said, the news soon got out. The prince had no idea what was going on. Right now he was standing in the spacious hall, feeling a little dizzy. He was in. Just like that. Feng Wu quickly came out to greet him. "You're here." She waved at the prince. However, the prince didn't recognize Feng Wu and only looked at her in bewilderment. "Right, I forgot about that." Feng Wu waved at him. "I used to disguise myself as the ugly girl, but I'm back now." "What? Don't you recognize me?" The prince said, "That difference. It was so huge. Before Feng Wu was an ugly girl, but now she was stunning." No words could describe how stunning she was. The prince was infatuated. "Hey, wake up." Feng Wu patted him on the shoulder. The crown prince blushed. Feng Wu was so magnanimous that he would look petty if he behaved this way. The prince sighed. "I've long heard that Miss Feng Wu of the Junhua Empire is unparalleled in her beauty. I couldn't tell with your disguise earlier, but now, I see that you're indeed worthy of fame." It was said that she and Jun Linyuan were engaged. At that thought, the prince felt a little jealous. Feng Wu didn't expect the prince to overthink it. She only asked, "Do you know why I asked you to come in?" Chapter 3868. Chapter 3868. Take you to the Patriarch 1. Chapter 3868. Take you to the Patriarch 1. The prince shook his head in bewilderment. Feng Wu said, "Bring little Zhao here to your father." She was very busy, and was ready to leave after that. Only then did the prince realize what had happened. Wait! Feng Wu turned around, and looked at him in bewilderment. What? The prince asked anxiously. Can you walk freely in and out of this tower now? Feng Wu nodded. Of course. The prince asked. Can you show your real face now? Feng Wu nodded. Of course. The prince went on. Can you go on? Feng Wu nodded. Of course. The prince was speechless. Why? The prince didn't understand, and looked at Feng Wu in disbelief. You're not bluffing, are you? Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Do you think I can brag about letting the eagle bring you here? Do you think I can brag to let you in? Do you think I can brag about bringing you to your patriarch? The prince shook his head every time Feng Wu asked a question. However, he stared at her in astonishment when she finished her sentence. What did you say? Feng Wu was confused. What do you mean? The crown prince said. What did you just say? You can take me to the patriarch? Feng Wu nodded. Of course. Was it that hard to meet her sixth senior brother? The prince rolled his eyes at Feng Wu. Stop bragging. Feng Wu almost laughed. What a coincidence. Just then Patriarch Huyan rushed out. He let out a breath of relief when he saw Feng Wu. Why are you running around? I almost couldn't find you. What did you do with the mosquito? Tell me. The prince was dumbfounded when he saw the old man. That was their patriarch, wasn't it? The prince had seen the old master up close during ceremonies, so he recognized him right away. However, he wasn't so sure because the old master used to sit in a high position with a solemn look on his face. Even his father didn't dare to breathe loudly in front of him. However, the old man was so lively that he reminded the prince of a child. That was why the prince didn't dare to greet the old master. Patriarch Huyan had been watching Feng Wu the whole time. Seeing that Feng Wu was looking away, he followed her gaze. He recognized the boy right away. Isn't that? What was his name? Patriarch Huyan realized that he had forgotten the kid's name. The prince dropped to his knees and said respectfully, Patriarch, it's my honor to meet you. After that he kowtowed 3 times. Patriarch Huyan nodded, then turned to Feng Wu. Let's go. What's with the mosquito and the high flame? Patriarch Huyan had a lot of questions. He had learned to forge weapons from his master. So he wanted to use the time when his junior sister was around to teach her what he was best at. However, to his surprise, his junior sister was even better at it than he was. She could even make explosives. That was incredible. Therefore, it was now Patriarch Huyan's turn to follow Feng Wu around and learn from her on forging weapons. The eldest prince, who was kneeling on the ground, was speechless. He recalled the conversation he had with Feng Wu and didn't know what to say. Before the patriarch dragged Feng Wu away, she only had time to give the prince one instruction. Chapter 3869. Chapter 3869. Take you to the patriarch, too. Chapter 3869. Take you to the patriarch, too. Bring little Zhao here. Your father needs him. Before the prince could reply, Feng Wu was dragged away by Patriarch Huyan. The prince was speechless. Just then, she heard a familiar voice. You're still here? Turning around, the prince saw that it was Princess Rao. Right now, she was talking to the giant eagle and addressing it as Grandpa. The prince was speechless. If he remembered it correctly, Feng Wu had been addressing the eagle as Brother Eagle. Just then, the giant eagle prompted the prince. Get on with your work. The prince nodded immediately. After the prince left, Princess Rao feigned a curious tone and asked what he was doing there. The giant eagle glanced at her and warned her. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Princess Rao had always been on friendly terms with the giant eagle. Hence, after being scolded, she lowered her head and put on a pitiful look. The giant eagle was about to tell her something when it heard Feng Wu's voice. Brother Eagle? The giant eagle forgot all about Princess Rao and immediately said, right away. It ran away. Princess Rao stomped her foot in frustration. Wait, what did she hear? That was a familiar female voice, and she was sure that she had heard it somewhere before. However, she couldn't remember where she had heard that voice. She looked at the wooden bucket under her feet and decided to get back to work. Princess Rao was used to the work, but what she didn't know was that the prince would see her when she worked. The prince had brought little Zhao here to look after his father as Feng Wu had instructed. The king could get out of bed now, so the prince and little Zhao helped him out. They were going to walk around in the courtyard when they saw someone scrubbing the floor. The king didn't recognize her at first, but little Zhao did. Isn't that? Only then did the king look in that direction. One look and he was dumbfounded. By then, he had recognized the person scrubbing the floor inch by inch. It was none other than his precious Princess Rao. Scrubbing the floor. Although it wasn't a shameful thing to scrub the floor for the patriarch, after all, she was here to serve the master. The king recalled what Rao-shi said earlier. She said, "The patriarch likes me a lot. He often lets me go into the tower, saying that it's full of spiritual essence and good for my health. He likes me a lot. He says, why can't a princess be the ruler? He's on my side. The patriarch likes me a lot. He said he would give me the primary heaven pill, and I'm the only princess he likes." The patriarch. Emperor Yin looked suspicious. Did the patriarch like her, dote on her, and care for her as she said? Before, the king didn't think much of it, but now, he felt that something wasn't right. The prince felt he couldn't add insult to injury, so he said, "Is the patriarch letting her use this method to train her body? Isn't she in poor health?" "Is that so?" The king wasn't convinced. "Let's go back." The king didn't go to the princess. He let the other two walk him back to his stone room. Just then, Feng Wu came out of another refinery room. Chapter 3870. Chapter 3870. Take you to the Patriarch 3. Chapter 3870. Take you to the Patriarch 3. That was the master's refinery room, and he was the only one allowed in, not even the giant eagle. But now Feng Wu had walked out of that room. Seeing the king, Feng Wu nodded at him and greeted him in a familiar tone. "You can walk around now." It was like a normal conversation between ordinary people. The prince didn't know what to say. She was talking to his father, the king of Northern Yen. Young lady, was it appropriate to talk to him like that? Did she think that his father wouldn't hold grudges against her? He kept winking at Feng Wu, but Feng Wu couldn't read his mind, and only gave him a confused look. The prince was speechless. However, the king didn't think that Feng Wu had offended him at all. Instead, he was excited by Feng Wu's attitude. "Yes, I can walk around now. Thank you for the medicine, Master Ant." The king was very respectful toward Feng Wu. He had heard Patriarch Huyan address Feng Wu as junior sister, which meant that she had to be an old woman over 100 years old. He had to show her some respect. The king even bowed to her. The prince was astonished. He had never been so shocked before. "Ant Master?" A bow. What? To the prince, his father had always been an authoritative figure. Sometimes, he didn't even dare to breathe loudly in front of his father. But now, he couldn't understand it anymore. Wasn't Feng Wu just a girl from the Zhenwu Empire? At most, she was a genius girl that had been rising day by day. There were so many unattainable geniuses out there, that a ruler didn't need to bow at her at all. The look on the prince's face kept changing, and Feng Wu was amused. But she didn't say anything. She only nodded at the king and said indifferently, "I'm glad that you can get out of bed, but your condition is quite serious this time. I don't think you'll be able to make a full recovery with the help of medicine. Let me treat your acupoints for you." The king was elated and nodded. The prince was there the whole time when Feng Wu treated the king. He was shocked at first when he saw how skillful Feng Wu was, but he soon fell into deep thought. She was a top refiner and a top medicine refiner. Although she was a good-for-nothing with 0 cultivation level. Wait, the prince suddenly sensed Feng Wu's spiritual essence, and his eyes widened. He stared at Feng Wu. No, that couldn't be. How could she? Feng Wu had been hiding her spiritual essence, but because she was going to treat the king, she let it show, and the prince immediately sensed it. That's... The prince stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Feng Wu wasn't a cripple. Not only wasn't she useless, but she was also more capable than him. What level was she? At that thought, the prince felt like crying. He wanted to say, How's that possible? I don't believe it. But it was the truth. He saw with his own eyes that Feng Wu had refined a semi-divine weapon. He saw how Feng Wu treated his father, and how she used her spiritual essence. He almost lost control. Feng Wu let out a breath of relief after putting away the needles. The king looked expectantly at Feng Wu. Feng Wu nodded and smiled. Your Majesty, don't worry. Your energy channels are all working. You'll be fine for a while. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.